Hey guys, welcome back to another journey into the quiet, dusty corners of history. Before we begin tonight's exploration, before we drift away from the noise of the modern world and step into the cobblestone streets of the past, I am curious to know where you are listening from right now. From which corner of the globe are you tuning in? Which country, which city is currently holding you as you prepare to rest? Please let me know in the comments below. It is always fascinating to see how far our campfire stretches. Now I invite you to make yourself comfortable. Adjust your pillows. Pull the blanket up to your chin. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Take a deep, slow breath in and let it out. Tonight we are going to travel back to a time when the cure was often as feared as the disease itself. We are going to explore the world of medieval medicine. Not the heroic, sanitized version we sometimes see in movies, but the gritty, painful, and dangerously misunderstood reality of what it meant to be a patient in the Middle Ages. We will walk through the doors of the barber-surgeons, stand beside the beds of kings enduring royal treatments, and witness the strange logic that governed the human body before the age of science. It is a world where pain was expected, where silence was rare, and where the line between healing and harming was incredibly thin. So close your eyes and let us begin. Imagine, if you will, that you are walking through the narrow, winding streets of a bustling medieval town. It is the year 1350. The air is thick and heavy, carrying the scent of wood smoke, damp wool, and the unmistakable odor of a city without modern plumbing. The sky above is a flat iron gray, threatening rain that will turn the dirt path beneath your feet into a thick, clinging mud. You are not walking for pleasure today. You are walking because of a dull, throbbing ache in your lower jaw. It started days ago. A small annoyance while you were eating hard bread. But now it has bloomed into a relentless, pounding rhythm that echoes in your temple and keeps you awake through the long, dark nights. You have tried the folk remedies. You have chewed on cloves. You have rinsed your mouth with vinegar. You even held a warm stone against your cheek until the skin turned red. But the pain remains. It is a deep-rooted thing, a visitor that refuses to leave. And so you have no choice. You must visit the barber-surgeon. As you turn the corner, you see it. The sign is unmistakable, even from a distance. A wooden pole, painted with spiraling stripes of red and white, juts out from the side of a timber-framed building. The paint is chipped and faded from years of wind and rain. But the message is clear. The red represents the blood. The white represents the bandages. It is a stark, honest advertisement for what happens inside. There is no promise of painless relief here, only the promise of blood and binding. You approach the shop. The window is small, made of thick, clouded glass that distorts the shapes moving inside. You can't see clearly, but you can hear. There is the low murmur of voices, the scrape of metal against leather, and occasionally a sharp intake of breath or a stifled groan. You hesitate at the door. The handle is made of heavy iron, cold to the touch. You know that once you step inside, you are surrendering control. You are placing your body, your pain, and your fragile hope into the hands of a man whose training comes not from books or universities, but from an apprenticeship of cutting hair, trimming beards, and slicing flesh. You push the door open. A bell tinkles, a surprisingly cheerful sound that seems out of place. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It is a complex, overwhelming sensory wall. It smells of stale sweat and unwashed bodies, of course. That is the smell of the age. But layered over that is the metallic tang of old blood, dried on the floorboards or soaked into the wood of the tables. There is the sharp, biting scent of vinegar, used liberally to wipe down surfaces, and the earthy, herbal aroma of dried sage and mugwort hanging in bundles from the ceiling rafters. And beneath it all, the faint, singed smell of cauterization, flesh burned to stop the bleeding. The room is dimmer than the street outside. Light filters in through the small window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. The floor is covered in fresh rushes, dried reeds scattered to catch the dirt and fluids that inevitably fall. They rustle softly as you step onto them. In the center of the room sits the chair. It is a sturdy, high-backed wooden construct, dark with age and use. The armrests are worn smooth by the grip of countless hands, polished by the sweat of fear and pain. There are leather straps attached to the legs and the arms of the chair. Heavy, thick leather darkened with oil. You know what they are for. They are not there for support. They are there for restraint. In a world without anesthesia, without the mercy of a numbing needle or a sleeping pill, the only way to ensure a patient sits still during a procedure is to bind them tight. The barber-surgeon is busy with another customer. He is a broad-shouldered man, wearing a leather apron that is stained with stiff, dark patches. His sleeves are rolled up to his elbows, revealing arms that are strong and hairy. He is currently shaving a merchant, his razor gliding smoothly over the man's lathered chin. This is the duality of his profession. In one moment, he is a groom, tending to vanity and appearance, trimming beards and cutting hair. In the next, with the same hands and often the same tools, he becomes a surgeon, pulling teeth, lancing boils, setting broken bones and amputating limbs. You take a seat on a narrow bench against the wall to wait. The wood is hard and unforgiving. Beside you sits an old woman nursing a swollen arm wrapped in dirty linen, and a young boy who looks pale and frightened, holding his hand to his ear. The waiting is almost worse than the procedure itself. It is a time for your mind to race, to imagine the cold touch of the instruments you see laid out on a side table. You let your eyes wander over those instruments. They are laid out on a cloth, gleaming dully in the low light. There are knives of various sizes, some with curved blades, some straight. There are saws, small and jagged. There are pliers, heavy iron pincers that look more like tools for a blacksmith than for a healer. And there is the cautery iron, resting in a small brazier of coals that glows faintly in the corner, ready to be heated until it is red hot. The atmosphere in the shop is not one of hushed reverence or clinical sterility. It is a place of business. The barber chats with the merchant about the price of wool and the rumors of war in the south. He wipes his razor on a cloth that hangs from his belt, a cloth that looks like it hasn't been washed in weeks. In the medieval mind, the concept of germs does not exist. Infection is thought to be caused by bad air, miasma, or an imbalance of the body's humors. The idea that invisible creatures live on the unwashed blade or the dirty hands of the surgeon is centuries away from discovery. So he doesn't wash his hands between the shave and his inspection of the old woman's arm. He simply wipes them on his apron. This simple, mundane action, repeated thousands of times a day across Europe, is a death sentence for many. But here in this room, it is just normal. It is just how things are done. Your turn is approaching. The merchant pays his coin and leaves, rubbing his smooth chin. The barber-surgeon turns his attention to the room. His eyes scan the bench and land on you. He nods, a silent summons. Your heart begins to beat a little faster, a heavy thudding against your ribs. You stand up, your legs feeling slightly heavy, and walk toward the chair. The rushes crunch beneath your boots. The smell of the vinegar and blood seems stronger now that you are closer to the center of the room. You sit in the chair. The wood is warm from the previous occupant. "What ails you?" the barber asks. His voice is gruff but not unkind. It is the voice of a man who has seen everything and is surprised by nothing. You point to your jaw. "A tooth," you say, your voice sounding small in the room. "It has been aching for 3 days." He nods, seemingly bored. "Open." You open your mouth. His fingers are rough and taste of salt and iron as he probes inside. He taps the offending tooth with a metal pick, sending a jolt of lightning-hot pain through your jaw that makes your eyes water. You flinch, grabbing the armrests. "Rotten," he declares simply. "Deep in the root. The worm has gotten into it." This is the common belief of the time. The tooth decay is caused by a toothworm that burrows into the tooth like a worm into an apple. It is a logical explanation for the holes that appear in teeth and the gnawing pain that feels like something is eating you from the inside. "It must come out," he says. He turns away to the table of instruments. There is no discussion of options. There is no root canal therapy, no filling, no crown. If a part of the body is offending, if it is causing pain or sickness, it is removed. The logic is brutal and binary. Keep it and suffer, or remove it and suffer a different, sharper, but hopefully shorter pain. He picks up the pliers. They are called a pelican because of their shape, a clawed instrument designed to grip the tooth and lever it out of the jawbone. He also picks up a small knife. Lean back, he commands. Head against the rest. You do as you are told. You feel his hands on your shoulders, pushing you firmly back against the wood. Then he reaches for the leather straps. For your safety, he says, buckling the strap across your chest. And for mine, I need you still. The panic begins to rise now. The reality of what is about to happen settles in. You are trapped, bound to a chair in a dim, smelly room, about to be assaulted by a man with a pair of blacksmith's pliers. You look at the ceiling, trying to find a focal point, a distraction. There is a spider web in the corner, a delicate, symmetrical thing. You try to focus on that. The barber-surgeon steps in close. He blocks the light. You can smell his breath, onions and ale. He brings the knife to your mouth first. This is to cut the gum, he explains almost casually, to loosen the hold. There is no countdown, no 1, 2, 3. He works quickly. The knife slices into the gum around the tooth. The pain is sharp and immediate, a hot line of fire. You taste blood, warm and metallic, flooding your mouth. You want to scream, to pull away, but the straps hold you tight and his other hand clamps down on your forehead, pinning your skull against the headrest. Steady, he grunts. He trades the knife for the pliers. The cold metal touches your lip, then slides inside. He maneuvers the claw around the tooth, pushing deep into the fresh wound he has just made. The grating sound of metal against bone vibrates through your entire skull. It is a sound more than a feeling at first, a crunching, scraping sound that seems to come from inside your own head. Then he clamps down. The pressure is immense. It feels as if your jaw is being crushed. And then the leverage begins. He is not pulling straight out. He is rocking the tooth back and forth, breaking the periodontal ligaments that hold it in place. The pain is blinding. It is a white-hot explosion that obliterates every other thought in your mind. The world narrows down to this single point of agony in your mouth. You cry out, a garbled, choked sound. Your hands grip the armrest so hard your knuckles turn white. You kick your feet against the floorboards. Tears stream down your face, hot and stinging. Almost there, the barber mutters, sweat beading on his own forehead from the exertion. Pulling a molar from a healthy, grown adult is an act of significant physical strength. With a final sickening crack, a sound like a dry branch snapping, the tooth gives way. The sudden release of pressure is disorienting. The barber pulls his hand back and you see it, held in the jaws of the pliers, a bloody yellowed thing with long, twisted roots. Out, he says, tossing it into a bucket near his feet where it lands with a wet clatter among others. But it is not over. The hole in your gum is bleeding freely. He grabs a piece of rough linen, dips it in a mixture of vinegar and salt, which burns like fire, and jams it into the socket. Bite down, he orders. You bite down, trembling, exhausted, your face wet with sweat and tears. The adrenaline is fading, leaving you shaking and cold. The pain has changed from a sharp spike to a dull, throbbing hammer, but the specific agony of the levering is gone. He unbuckles the straps. You did well, he says, wiping his hands on his apron again. Keep the cloth in for an hour. Rinse with wine if you have it. If it swells, put a leech on the cheek. You stumble out of the chair, your legs feeling like jelly. You pay him a few coins for the service of agony and step back out into the street. The cool air hits your face, shocking after the stifle of the shop. The mud, the gray sky, the smell of the city, it all rushes back. You are one tooth lighter and in a significant amount of pain, but you have survived. This was a routine visit. This was a minor procedure. This was the best dental care money could buy. And it was, by modern standards, absolute torture. But imagine now if your ailment was not a tooth. Imagine if it was something more internal, something more mysterious. Imagine if you had a fever that wouldn't break, or a pain in your gut, or a strange lethargy. For those ailments, the barber-surgeon, or the university-educated physician, would turn to the most fundamental, the most widespread, and perhaps the most draining treatment of the entire Middle Ages. They would not add something to your body to heal it. They would take something away. Let us leave the sharp, sudden pain of the barber's chair behind. Let us step out of that dim shop and move into a different setting, a place where the suffering is quieter, slower, and drawn out over days or even weeks. Imagine yourself now in a bedchamber. It is the deep of winter. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn tight against the drafty stone window, blocking out the pale light of the afternoon. The room is lit only by the flickering orange glow of a fireplace and a few tallow candles that sputter in their iron holders. The air here is stiflingly hot, intentionally kept so, thick with the smell of sickness, unwashed linens, and the smoke of burning herbs, rosemary and juniper, tossed onto the fire to purify the air. You are lying in the bed. You are heavy with fever. Your skin feels like parchment that has been left too close to a flame, dry, hot, and tight. Your head throbs with a dull, rhythmic ache that matches the beating of your heart. You drift in and out of a restless sleep, where dreams are confused and colorful, fueled by the heat in your blood. In the corner of the room, two men are speaking in hushed, serious tones. One you recognize. It is the barber-surgeon, the man with the strong hands and the leather apron. But he is not in charge here. He stands deferentially, holding his bag of tools, waiting for orders. The other man is different. He wears a long, flowing robe of dark wool, trimmed with fur. On his head is a soft cap. He holds himself with an air of immense authority and learned wisdom. This is the physician. He is a man of the university. He has studied the ancient texts of Galen and Hippocrates. He has read the stars. He understands the secret language of the body, or at least he believes he does. He does not work with his hands. Manual labor is beneath him. He works with his mind. He diagnoses. The barber cuts. He approaches your bedside now. His face is solemn. He reaches out a hand, soft, uncalloused, and places his fingers on your wrist. He is not just counting the beats. He is analyzing the character of your pulse. Is it bounding? Is it thready? Is it like the surge of a tide or the flutter of a bird? He closes his eyes, humming softly to himself, consulting the mental library of medical knowledge he has spent years memorizing. Then he turns to the bedside table where a glass flask sits. It is filled with a yellowish liquid, your urine. He picks it up, holding it against the candlelight. He swirls it gently, peering into the depths. He is looking for sediment, for cloudiness, for the specific shade of gold or amber that will reveal the secrets of your internal state. This is uroscopy, the primary diagnostic tool of the age. He sets the flask down and turns to your family who hover anxiously in the doorway. The diagnosis is clear, he announces, his voice calm and certain. The patient is suffering from a plethora. A plethora. It sounds complex, but the meaning is simple. In the medieval view of the world, the body is a container for four fluids, known as the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health is a state of perfect balance between these four. Sickness is merely an imbalance. And you? You have too much blood. The fever, the flushed face, the bounding pulse. These are all signs that your body is overfilled. The blood is stagnant, rotting inside your veins, like water in a swamp that has stopped flowing. It is pressing against your organs, heating you up from the inside. The logic to them is flawless. If a pot is boiling over, you do not put a lid on it. You scoop out some of the water. If a river is flooding, you dig a trench to divert the stream. We must open a vein, the physician declares. We must let the sickness out. He consults a scroll he pulls from his sleeve. It is not a medical chart as we know it, but a celestial one. It is the zodiac man. This diagram shows a human body with the 12 signs of the zodiac superimposed over different body parts. Aries rules the head, Gemini the arms, Scorpio the loins, Pisces the feet. The physician checks the date. He checks the phase of the moon. He must ensure that the stars are aligned. You cannot bleed a patient from the arm when the moon is in Gemini, for Gemini rules the arms. And to cut there, when the sign is dominant, would be to invite uncontrollable bleeding. He nods, satisfied. The moon is in a safe house. The procedure can proceed. He gestures to the barber-surgeon. The cephalic vein, the physician instructs, pointing to the outside of your elbow. Draw 10 ounces, no less. The barber steps forward. The physician steps back. He will not touch the blood. That is the work of the lower classes. The barber rolls up the sleeve of your nightshirt. He takes a strip of linen and ties it tightly around your upper arm, just above the elbow. He pulls it hard. You feel the pressure building. The blood is trapped, unable to return to the heart. The veins in the crook of your arm begin to swell, standing out like blue cords against your pale, feverish skin. He asks you to grip a wooden staff, a bleeding stick, to pump up the muscles and make the vein even more prominent. Your hand shakes as you grip it, weak from the fever. The barber opens his kit. He does not take out a knife this time. He takes out a fleam or a lancet. It is a small double-edged blade, often protected by a tortoise-shell cover, sharp as a razor. He holds it between his thumb and forefinger. He brings a pewter bowl close to your arm, tucking it under your elbow to catch the flow. The room falls silent. The only sound is the crackle of the fire and your own shallow breathing. Steady, the barber whispers. He places his thumb on the vein to stabilize it. Then with a practiced flicking motion he strikes. It is not a slice, it is a puncture. The lancet drives into the vein. You feel a sharp, stinging pop, like a hornet's sting, followed immediately by a strange sensation of internal warmth rushing to the surface. The blood comes. It doesn't trickle. Because of the tourniquet, because of the pressure, it arcs out in a dark, steady stream, splashing into the metal bowl with a rhythmic tap, tap, tap sound. The physician steps closer, peering into the bowl, not to help, but to observe. Look at the color, he says, pointing. Dark, heavy. That is the corrupted blood. That is the fever leaving the body. You watch your own life force leaving you. It swirls in the bowl, steam rising from it in the cool air of the room. At first the pain in your arm is sharp, but it quickly dulls to a throb. What you feel more than pain is a growing lightness. As the ounces tick by, 5, 6, 7, the room begins to swim. The edges of your vision start to blur and darken. The heat of the fever seems to recede, replaced by a creeping coldness in your fingers and toes. Your head feels floaty, untethered from your body. He is paling, the barber notes, looking at your face. Good, the physician replies. The heat is breaking. Continue. They are mistaking the symptoms of shock, blood loss, dropping blood pressure, lack of oxygen to the brain, for the calming of the disease. As you grow quieter, as your thrashing stops, as you sink deeper into the pillow, they believe the treatment is working. You are becoming balanced. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the barber nods. 10 ounces. He unties the linen strip. The relief on your arm is immediate, though the cut continues to bleed sluggishly. He takes a pad of linen, places it over the wound, and wraps it tightly with a bandage. You are exhausted. More exhausted than you have ever been. You feel hollowed out, as if they have taken not just your blood but your strength. You can barely lift your hand. You close your eyes, and the darkness takes you. But sometimes the lancet was not enough. Sometimes the imbalance was not in the great veins of the arm, but localized. A swelling in the knee, a headache behind the eyes, a congestion in the chest. For these, the medieval doctor had a different, smaller, and perhaps more unsettling ally. The leech. Imagine now that the pain is not a general fever, but a specific, localized inflammation. The physician decides that the bad blood is trapped just beneath the skin in a specific spot. You cannot open a vein there, so he reaches into a jar of water brought by the barber. In the jar, swimming in slow undulating ribbons, are the worms. Hirudo medicinalis, the medicinal leech. They are dark, slimy creatures, patterned with stripes of olive green and black. They have no eyes that you can see, only a mouth at one end, a sucker filled with 3 tiny jaws, each lined with hundreds of microscopic teeth. The barber takes one out. It writhes in his fingers, searching for warmth. He places it on your skin, right over the painful area. You feel the cold, wet touch of the creature. It explores your skin for a moment, sensing the blood pulsing beneath. Then it anchors itself. You feel a tiny prickly sensation, like a nettle sting, as the three jaws soar through your skin. The leech begins to feed. It does not hurt after that first bite. The leech secretes a natural anesthetic in its saliva, numbing the area so you do not feel it drinking. It also secretes an anticoagulant, something that stops your blood from clotting, ensuring a free and steady meal. You watch in a mix of fascination and horror as the creature begins to swell. It starts as a thin ribbon, but as it fills with your blood, it grows thick, heavy, and bloated. It pulses rhythmically, a living pump attached to your body. The doctor might order 5, 10, even 20 of these creatures to be applied at once. You lie there, a garden for these parasites, watching them grow fat on your essence. When they are full, they simply drop off, rolling away onto the sheets like overripe berries, leaving behind a small star-shaped wound that will bleed for hours because of the anti-clotting agent. This was not a rare, desperate measure. This was the aspirin of the Middle Ages. Headache, leech on the temple. Hemorrhoids, leeches applied directly to the afflicted area. Gum disease, leeches inside the mouth. Millions of these creatures were harvested and shipped across Europe every year. In the 19th century, the demand was so high that the medicinal leech almost went extinct in Britain. For the patient, the experience was one of passive endurance. You lay still. You let them cut you. You let them drain you. You let them apply worms to your skin. And all the while you were told that this was good for you, that this weakness you felt was actually health returning. But there were times when the imbalance was not in the blood. Sometimes the problem was deeper. Sometimes the devil was in the details, literally. And for those deeply internal, mysterious pains that could not be bled away, the doctors turned to methods that were less about subtraction and more about invasion. As the sun sets outside your window, casting long, dancing shadows across the room, the physician packs away his zodiac chart. The barber cleans his lancet in a bowl of water, turning the clear liquid pink. You are alive. You are pale. You are weak. But the night is not over, because what if the fever returns? What if the pain shifts? What if the problem is not too much blood, but a blockage in the bowels? Then they would turn to the clyster. The room is quieter now. The barber-surgeon has packed away his lancets and his bowls of blood. The fire has burned down to glowing embers, casting a deep, pulsing red light across the stone floor. You are lighter, weaker, drained of the excess humor that the physician claimed was boiling within you. But relief has not come. The heaviness in your gut remains. The fever still clings to your skin like a damp shroud. The physician, standing by the window and watching the moon rise, shakes his head. The bloodletting was necessary, he assures you, but it was only the first step. The blockage is stubborn, the humors are not flowing. The wind is trapped deep inside the coils of your body. We must attack from below, he murmurs. He claps his hands and a new figure enters the room. This is not the barber with his smell of iron and stale ale. This is the apothecary's assistant. He carries a wooden box and a steaming pot. The smell that enters with him is pungent and earthy, a mix of boiled chamomile, mallows, honey, and something sharper like brine or vinegar. He sets the pot on the table. Inside, a dark, viscous liquid swirls. This is the lavement, the clyster, the medieval enema. In the modern world, this is a procedure of last resort, a clinical, sterile, and private affair. But here, in the dim light of the 14th century, it is a standard weapon in the medical arsenal. It is as common as a bandage, yet far more intrusive. And the instrument used to administer it is not a gentle rubber bulb or a plastic bag. It is a machine. The assistant opens the wooden box and lifts it out. The clyster syringe. It is a formidable object, gleaming dully in the candlelight. It looks less like a medical device and more like a weapon of war or a tool from a blacksmith's forge. It is made of pewter, or perhaps brass, heavy and cold. It consists of a long metal tube, the nozzle, attached to a wide cylinder that holds the liquid. Inside the cylinder fits a wooden plunger, wrapped in leather or greased linen to create a seal. It is huge. It holds a pint, perhaps two, of liquid. The sheer size of it is terrifying as you lie there, helpless in your bed. Turn, the physician commands. There is no room for modesty here. Modesty is a luxury for the healthy. The sick are public property. Their bodies are landscapes to be surveyed, mapped, and invaded. You turn onto your side, curling your knees toward your chest, exposing your back to the room. The air is cold against your skin. You hear the clinking of the metal as the assistant draws the plunger back, sucking the warm brown liquid from the pot into the cylinder. Slurp, clink. The sound is wet and mechanical. The mixture is good, the physician intones, reading from his notes. Mallows to soothe, chamomile to calm, salt to draw out the corruption, and coarse honey to irritate the bowel and force expulsion. To irritate, that is the goal. They do not want to gently flush you. They want to provoke your body into a violent reaction. They believe that the sickness is a physical substance, a demon of waste that must be exorcised through force. You feel the bed depress as the assistant leans over you. You can hear his breathing heavy and focused. You feel the touch of grease, lard, or butter being applied to the metal nozzle. And then the invasion begins. The metal is hard and unyielding. Unlike modern plastic, it does not bend. It does not conform to you. You must conform to it. The insertion is uncomfortable, a violation that makes your entire body tense up. You want to pull away to kick out, but you are too weak, and the hands of the assistant are firm on your hip, holding you in place. Steady, he grunts. Then he begins to push the plunger. This is not a gravity-fed drip. This is a piston. The liquid is forced into you under pressure. You feel the sudden, shocking rush of warmth flooding your insides. It feels unnatural, a reverse flow that goes against the very design of your body. The volume is immense. Your gut expands, stretching tight. A sharp, cramping pain begins to radiate through your abdomen as the salt and honey bite into the delicate lining of your intestines. Hold it, the physician orders. Let it work. Let it soften the stone. The assistant pushes the plunger all the way home. The pressure is intense. You feel as though you might burst. Every instinct in your body is screaming to expel this intruder, to purge the liquid immediately. But you must wait. You must lie there, impaled by this metal tube, filled with a boiling concoction of herbs and irritants, while the physician counts the minutes. The sensation is one of profound fullness and nausea. The wind they spoke of seems to double, churning inside you. You grip the sheets, your knuckles white, sweat breaking out on your forehead. Not from the fever this time, but from the sheer physical effort of holding back. Finally, the assistant withdraws the syringe. The relief of the metal leaving is instantly replaced by the urgency of the purge. "The pan," someone shouts. A chamber pot is thrust beneath you, or perhaps you are helped to a commode chair, a wooden box with a hole cut in the top. And then the violence begins. Your body rejects the medicine with a force that leaves you shaking. The liquid pours out, and with it, they hope, comes the sickness. The smell fills the small, unventilated room. It is a foul, acrid scent, the smell of the clyster mixed with the smell of illness, but no one turns away. The physician steps closer, once again inspecting the results. He looks at the color, the consistency, searching for black bile or phlegmatic mucus. "Better," he says, nodding sagely. "The blockage is clearing." You're left shivering, wiped clean with a rough cloth, and covered back up with the heavy furs. You feel hollowed out. First your blood, now your fluids. They are emptying you piece by piece, in the hope that what remains will be pure. This procedure, the clyster, was not a one-time event. For many in the Middle Ages and arguably peaking in the early modern period, it was a daily ritual. It was the cure for headaches, for melancholy, for skin rashes, for bad breath. If you were wealthy, you might have an apothecary visit you every morning to administer a cleaning before breakfast. The French King Louis XIV, the Sun King, is said to have received over 2,000 enemas during his reign. It became a court fashion. But for you, lying in this drafty medieval room, there is no fashion in it. There is only the cold metal, the burning salt, and the humiliating lack of privacy. As the night deepens, the physician finally packs his bag. He leaves you with a cup of watered wine and a promise to return in the morning to check your urine again. The assistant takes the great metal syringe, wiping the brown residue from its nozzle with a rag, and places it back in its box. You are left alone in the dark. The fire has died. The shadows have swallowed the corners of the room. You are sore. You are bleeding slightly from the arm, and your gut aches with the phantom memory of the piston. You close your eyes, listening to the wind howl outside the stone walls. You have survived the cure. You have endured the help. And as you drift off into an exhausted, fitful sleep, you realize the terrifying truth of your time. The doctor is not a savior. He is a mechanic of the flesh, and your body is simply a machine that must be hammered, drained, and flushed until it works again. But if you think the suffering of the common man was great, imagine for a moment the suffering of the most powerful man in the world. Imagine a pain so specific, so intimate, and so politically dangerous that it changed the course of surgical history. We are going to leave your bedside now. We are going to travel forward in time just a little and cross the channel to the glittering golden halls of Versailles. We are going to witness a medical event that was so famous, musicians wrote songs about it, and courtiers begged to undergo the same surgery just to be like their king. We are going to look at the royal fistula. The air in the Hall of Mirrors is cool today. The year is 1686. We have left the muddy streets of the common town and the dark vinegar-soaked shop of the village barber. We have traveled to the epicenter of the Western world, the Palace of Versailles. Imagine standing there. The walls are lined with 17 massive arched mirrors, reflecting the light of 17 matching windows that look out over the meticulously manicured gardens. The floor is polished parquet, gleaming like glass. The ceiling is a riot of color, painted by Lebrun to celebrate the triumphs of the king. Everywhere you look, there is gold. Gold leaf on the moldings, gold thread in the tapestries, gold buckles on the shoes of the courtiers who whisper in the corners. But beneath this veneer of absolute perfection, beneath the powdered wigs and the heavy layers of silk and velvet, there is a secret. It is a secret that is being kept with the utmost desperation. It is a secret that threatens to destabilize the entire kingdom of France. The Sun King, Louis XIV, the man who famously declared, "I am the state," is in agony. He does not show it. When he walks through the gallery, his heels clicking rhythmically on the wood, his posture is erect. His face is a mask of calm, divine indifference. He waves a hand, he nods, he smiles, but every step is a battle. Every time he sits on his throne, he has to suppress a wince. He has stopped riding his horse, a shocking change for a monarch who lives for the hunt. He is spending more time in his private chambers, lying on his stomach while his ministers make excuses about fatigue or minor indispositions. The truth is far more human and far more humbling. The most powerful man on earth is suffering from an anal fistula. It is a condition that today is a minor surgical inconvenience. It is an abnormal connection, a small tunnel that forms between the end of the bowel and the skin near it. It is painful, it is prone to infection, and it leaks. For a man whose entire life is a public performance, who is watched while he eats, while he dresses, and even while he sleeps, it is a nightmare of embarrassment and physical torture. But in 1686, this is not just an embarrassment, it is a crisis. For months, the king's physicians have tried to cure him. Remember the distinction. Physicians are the men of the university, the men of theory. They do not cut. They have applied poultices made of rare herbs. They have prescribed waters from the mineral springs of Versailles. They have debated the alignment of the planets. They have purged him, bled him, and starved him. Nothing has worked. The pain has only grown worse. The tumor, as they call it in hushed tones, has hardened. The infection is spreading. The king is developing a fever, and so a terrifying realization begins to dawn on the inner circle of the court. The medicine of the ancients, the medicine of Galen and Hippocrates, the medicine of balance and humors has failed. The king needs something else. He needs something that is considered dirty, dangerous, and manual. He needs a surgeon. Enter Charles-François Félix. Imagine him for a moment. He is not a nobleman by birth. He is a barber-surgeon. His profession is one of blood and steel, not Latin and logic. In the rigid hierarchy of the French court, he is technically a servant. He is a man who works with his hands, which places him far below the physicians who work with their minds. But Felix is the premier surgeon to the king. He is a man of immense skill, steady nerves, and quiet ambition. He has been watching the physicians fail for months, waiting in the shadows. He knows, with the cold certainty of a man who understands anatomy, that no amount of holy water or herbal paste will close the fistula. It must be cut. However, to cut the king is treason. To spill the royal blood is a crime against God. If Felix operates and the king dies, Felix will not just be executed, he will be torn apart. He will be blamed for the fall of France. The pressure resting on his shoulders is heavier than the stone blocks of the palace itself. The king, desperate and in pain, finally summons Felix. He asks for the truth. "Sire," Felix says, bowing low, "the corruption is deep. It must be laid open. The knife is the only cure." The king listens. He is a brave man, a man who has led armies. He looks at his physicians who are wringing their hands and quoting ancient texts. Then he looks at the surgeon who stands still, his hands clasped behind his back. "Do it," the king says. But he does not say, "Do it now." He gives Felix a mandate that is both a blessing and a curse. He gives him time. He tells Felix to prepare. He tells him to find a method that will ensure success. He demands a procedure that is swift, precise, and survivable. And so begins one of the darkest and most fascinating chapters in medical history, the Great Experiment. Felix knows that the standard operation for a fistula is brutal. It involves retractors, heavy hooks to pull the flesh apart, and a cautery iron to burn the tissue. It is messy and imprecise. He cannot do this to the king. He needs a new way. He needs a new instrument. And he needs practice. He cannot practice on cadavers. Dead flesh does not bleed. It does not twitch. It does not scream. He needs living tissue. He needs to understand exactly how much pressure to apply, how the muscle reacts to the blade, how to stop the bleeding instantly. So in the secrecy of a hidden wing of the hospitals of Paris, and perhaps even in the dungeons of Versailles itself, Felix begins his rehearsals. The historical records are quiet on the names of these patients. They are listed simply as les misérables, the miserable ones. They are the poor, the prisoners, the galley slaves, the forgotten souls of the empire. They are brought to Felix in secret. They are told, perhaps, that they are receiving special treatment from the king's own surgeon. And in a way they are. For 6 months, Charles-François Felix operates. Imagine the scene in his private operating theater. It is dawn. The light is gray and cold. Felix stands over a wooden table. His instruments are laid out, prototypes of a new knife he is designing. It is a long, slender blade, curved like a scythe, made of the finest silver and steel. He calls it the bistouri à la royale, the royal knife. He has designed a retractor as well, a specialized probe that can be inserted into the fistula to guide the knife, ensuring that he cuts only what is necessary and nothing more. He works with obsessive, terrifying focus. He cuts, he observes, he bandages. Many of these practice patients do not survive. The shock kills them, or the infection that follows. They are buried at sunrise in unmarked graves with no bells tolling for their passing. Their lives are the price paid for the king's safety. Felix records every failure, every slip of the hand, every complication. He adjusts the curve of the blade. He refines the shape of the probe. He changes the mixture of the healing salve he applies afterward. He is a man possessed. He barely sleeps. His wife notices that his hands tremble when he eats, but they are rock steady when he picks up a knife. He is fighting for his life as much as the king's. If he fails on the day of the operation, the torture he will endure will make his surgical experiments look like mercy. The atmosphere in the court changes as the months drag on. Rumors fly. Why is the surgeon spending so much time in the hospitals? Why is the king refusing to sit? The courtiers, in their boredom and malice, whisper that the king is dying. Foreign ambassadors write code-laden letters back to England and Spain. hinting that the throne of France might soon be empty. Felix ignores it all. He is refining his masterpiece. By November of 1686, he is ready. He has performed the operation dozens of times. He has perfected the bistouri. He has trained his assistants to move like a single organism, anticipating his every need. He has calculated the exact angle of the cut, the exact duration of the pain. He goes to the king. "Sire," he says, his voice steady, though his heart must be hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "I am ready." The king looks at him. The pain is now constant. The fever is always there, a low heat behind his eyes. He nods. "Tomorrow," the king says, "at dawn, tell no one." The stage is set, but this will not be a performance for the public. There will be no audience in the gallery. This will be an intimate, terrifying act of violence committed in the absolute silence of the royal bedchamber. As night falls over Versailles on November 17th, 1686, the palace goes to sleep. The candles are snuffed out in the hall of mirrors. The fountains are turned off. The courtiers retire to their rooms to dream of power and favor. But in the king's chambers, the lights remain low. Felix is there, arranging his instruments on a velvet cloth. The silver of the royal knife glints in the firelight. He runs his thumb along the flat of the blade, checking the temper of the steel. It is sharp enough to split a hair. It is sharp enough to save a kingdom, or destroy it. You can imagine him sitting there in the heavy silence of the medical watch. He likely prays, not to Apollo, the god of healing, but to the Christian god of mercy. He looks at his hands, the hands of a barber, the hands of a commoner, and wonders if they are truly capable of holding the fate of France. The king sleeps fitfully. The surgeon does not sleep at all. This is the eve of the grand operation, the moment where the brutal, bloody reality of medieval medicine meets the absolute pinnacle of royal power. And you, listening now, are sitting in that room with them, waiting for the sun to rise. The morning of November 18th, 1686, breaks over Versailles with a heavy grey silence. The sun is hidden behind a thick bank of autumnal clouds, casting a flat, diffuse light through the tall windows of the king's bedchamber. Inside, the air is still. The usual bustle of the lever du roi, the elaborate ceremony of the king-s waking, where hundreds of courtiers vie for the honor of holding his shirt or watching him shave, has been cancelled. The doors are locked. The guards outside stand like statues, their pikes grounded, their faces impassive, though they must wonder at the strange quiet emanating from the center of the world. Inside the chamber, only a handful of people are present. There is Madame de Maintenon, the king's secret wife, her face pale, her hands clutching a rosary. There is Louvois, the minister of war, a man used to sending thousands to their deaths, now looking anxious and small in the face of this singular intimate battle. There is the king's confessor, Father Lachaise, murmuring prayers in a low rhythmic drone that blends with the crackling of the fire. And there is Charles-François Félix. The surgeon has laid out his instruments on a small table draped in white linen. The metal has been warmed near the fire so that the touch of cold steel will not startle the monarch. The bistouri à la royale, that custom-made curved knife, sits there, innocuous and deadly. Beside it lies the retractor, a slender rod of silver designed to guide the blade. There are bandages of the finest Egyptian cotton, soaked in burgundy wine to ward off infection. There are sponges. There are bowls of warm water. Louis XIV is positioned on the edge of his bed. The bed itself is a masterpiece of woodworking and upholstery, a vast landscape of feathers and velvet, but for this purpose it has been made firm. The king lies on his stomach. A bolster, a firm, cylindrical pillow, is placed under his hips to elevate the surgical field. There are no straps here. You cannot strap a king. You cannot bind the hands that hold the scepter of France. He must submit voluntarily. He must hold himself still through an act of supreme will. "Are you ready, Monsieur Felix?" the king asks. His voice is calm, though perhaps a little tighter than usual. "I am, sire," Felix replies. His hands, the hands that have practiced this specific motion hundreds of times in the dark cellars of the hospital, are steady. The trembling he felt at dinner has vanished. He has entered the trance of the craftsman. The procedure begins. Felix approaches the bedside. The room seems to hold its breath. Even the fire seems to quiet down. The only sound is the rustle of the surgeon's silk sleeves. He inserts the retractor. It is a slow, careful movement. The silver probe slides into the fistula, exploring the track that the infection has worn through the king's flesh. Louis grips the sheets. His knuckles turn white. A small muscle in his jaw jumps, but he makes no sound. Felix feels the tip of the probe emerge. He has mapped the terrain. He knows exactly where the blockage is, exactly how deep the corruption runs. Now he picks up the knife. The bisturi is beautiful in a terrifying way. It is slender, elegant, an extension of Felix's own index finger. He positions it. He threads the blade along the guide of the retractor. Then he cuts. It is not a hacking motion. It is a single fluid stroke, a drawing of the bow across the strings of a cello. The blade slices through the bridge of skin and muscle that forms the roof of the fistula. It lays the track open. The sensation for the king must be blinding. A sudden, searing line of fire that tears through the numbness of the lower body. But Felix does not stop. He cannot hesitate. To hesitate is to cause jagged edges, to invite slow healing. He completes the incision in one smooth arc. "You're done," Felix breathes. Blood wells up immediately, dark and rich, staining the white linen. But it is a clean bleed. It is the bleeding of a wound that can heal, not the festering of a trapped infection. Felix works quickly now. He does not reach for a cautery iron to burn the wound shut. That was the old way, the brutal way. He reaches for the scissors. He trims the edges of the wound, removing the callous, hardened tissue that had formed over the months of suffering. He cleans the cavity, his fingers moving with the dexterity of a lace maker. He packs the wound with the wine-soaked bandages. The alcohol stings, a sharp, biting aftershock to the surgery, but it is necessary. He applies a pad of lint, securing it with a complex system of bandages that wrap around the king's hips and thighs. The entire operation has taken perhaps 3 minutes. Louis XIV lets out a long, shuddering breath. He turns his head, sweat beading on his forehead, his wig slightly askew. He looks at Felix. "Is it finished?" "It is, sire." Felix bows, his knees finally feeling weak. "The corruption is gone." The king nods. He does not scream, he does not cry out. He simply asks for a glass of water. The relief in the room is palpable. It is a physical weight lifting from the shoulders of the witnesses. Madame de Maintenon weeps silently. Louvois unclasps his hands. The confessor crosses himself, but the story does not end with the cut. The aftermath of this surgery is almost as strange as the event itself. For the next month, the king is a patient, but he is a patient who must rule. He holds council meetings from his bed. Ambassadors are brought in to stand at the foot of the mattress, pretending not to notice the smell of wine, and Salve pretending not to notice the grimace of pain that crosses the king's face when he shifts his weight. Felix is there every day. He changes the dressings, he cleans the wound. He watches for the red streaks of sepsis, the fever that would signal the end of the reign. But the fever does not come. The redness fades. The flesh begins to knit together. The grand operation is a success. And then the secret breaks. The court finds out. You might expect that the reaction would be one of hushed embarrassment. After all, this is a surgery on the king's backside. It is a matter of the most private biological functions. But this is Versailles. At Versailles, nothing the king does is private, and everything the king does is fashionable. The fistula becomes the trend of the year. Suddenly, courtiers who are perfectly healthy begin to complain of pains in their posteriors. They walk with a slight limp, imitating the king's careful gait. They carry special pillows to sit on. But it goes further. People, wealthy dukes, counts, ladies of high standing, begin to demand the operation. They flock to Felix. They offer him vast sums of money. "Operate on me," they beg. I feel a twinge. Surely I have a fistula too. Felix, to his credit, mostly refuses. He is a serious man, not a butcher. But there are reports of courtiers who actually paid other, less scrupulous surgeons to bandage them up, or even to make small superficial cuts. just so they could boast of having endured the royal surgery. To bleed where the king bled was the ultimate act of loyalty. The recovery of the king is celebrated with a fervor that borders on hysteria. Te Deums, hymns of praise, are sung in every cathedral in France. Fireworks are launched over Paris. The fountains of Versailles run with wine. And Felix, the barber-surgeon, the man who started as a commoner, he is given a fortune. The king grants him an estate, a title, and a sum of money that would be equivalent to millions of dollars today. He is no longer just a pair of hands. He is the savior of the state. His success elevates the entire profession of surgery. Before this moment, surgeons were looked down upon by physicians. After this, surgery becomes a noble art. The bistouri à la royale is displayed like a holy relic. There is a legend, perhaps apocryphal but persistent, that a song was written to celebrate the king's successful recovery from this specific surgery. The lyrics were Dieu sauve le roi, God save the king. It is said that a visiting Englishman heard this tune, liked it, and took it back across the channel, where it eventually became the British national anthem. Whether true or not, it illustrates the sheer magnitude of this event. The king's bottom was the center of geopolitical stability. As we leave the gilded halls of Versailles, let the image of that silver knife stay with you. It represents the pinnacle of medieval and early modern medical success. It was painful, yes. It was terrifying. But it worked. However, not all mysteries of the body were so visible. Not all pains could be cut away with a silver knife. There were things in the medieval world that were not physical but spiritual, or so they thought. There were behaviors, compulsions, and strange phenomena that gripped entire villages, baffling the doctors and terrifying the priests. We are going to leave the logical, mechanical world of the surgeon now. We are going to travel deeper into the dark woods of history. We are going to a village square in the Holy Roman Empire. It is summer. The heat is oppressive, and the people are dancing. But they are not dancing for joy. They are dancing until their feet bleed. They are dancing until they collapse. They are dancing because they cannot stop. The silver knife has done its work. The King of France, Louis XIV, has survived the blade. In the hushed chambers of Versailles, the surgeons have packed their instruments away, and the court has let out a collective breath that seems to ripple through the very fabric of the nation. The crisis of the physical body, the infection, the fever, the tangible corruption of the flesh, has been resolved by the cold, hard logic of steel. But as the king lies in his bed, recovering amongst the velvet and the gold, we must turn our gaze outward. We must leave the sterile, wine-soaked bandages of the royal chamber and step out into the wider world. We must look at the paradoxical reality of this time. A world where a king is just a man who bleeds and suffers like any other, yet simultaneously, in the eyes of his people, is a living God capable of miracles. We are leaving the realm of surgery, where the cure is a cut. We are entering the realm of faith, where the cure is a touch. Imagine, if you will, that you are no longer a courtier in silk stockings. You are no longer a surgeon with a steady hand. You are something far more common, far more invisible to history. You are a peasant. You live in a small, thatch-roofed cottage in a village that feels like it is on the edge of the world, miles from the glittering center of power. Your life is defined by the rhythm of the seasons, the sowing, the reaping, the freezing, the thawing. It is a life of hard, repetitive labor where your hands are stained with the soil and your back is bent by the plow. But lately a new burden has been added to the weight you carry. It is not a burden of the fields. It is a burden of the body. For months you have felt it growing. It started as a small, hard kernel under the skin of your neck, just below the jawline. At first you ignored it. You thought it was a swollen gland from a winter cold, or perhaps a strain from lifting heavy sacks of grain. But it did not go away. It grew. It is the sickness they call the king's evil. In the medical books of the future, they will call it scrofula, a form of tuberculosis that infects the lymph nodes. But to you, it is a curse. The swellings have multiplied. They have softened and become painful. They press against your throat, making it hard to swallow the rough, dark bread that is your daily meal. They throb with a dull, insistent ache that keeps you awake in the long, quiet hours of the night. Worse than the pain is the shame. The swellings sometimes break open, weeping a fluid that smells of sickness and decay. People in the village look at you with pity, but they also step back. They do not want to be too close to the corruption. You have tried everything. You have visited the village wise woman. She gave you a poultice of crushed marigolds and goose fat. You applied it dutifully night after night, wrapping your neck in rough linen. It did nothing. You have prayed to Saint Roch, the patron saint of the plague. You have lit candles in the cold stone church, but the swellings remain. There is only one hope left, a hope that is whispered about in the market squares and shouted from the pulpits. It is the hope of the royal touch. The belief is ancient, rooted in the deep mystical soil of the Middle Ages. It says that the king is not merely a political leader, he is the anointed one. At his coronation he was touched by the holy oil of Clovis. He stands halfway between the earth and the heavens. Because of this, his body possesses a sacred energy, a divine spark that can banish disease. If he touches you, if his flesh meets your flesh, the evil will flee, and so you decide to walk. The journey to the palace is not a casual trip. It is a pilgrimage. You pack a small sack with dried apples and a piece of hard cheese. You wrap your feet in rags to protect them from the stones of the road. You say goodbye to your family, not knowing if you will return cured or if you will die on the roadside. You are not alone. As you walk the dusty, rutted roads toward Paris, you see others. At first, it is just one or two, a lone figure limping in the distance, a mother carrying a child wrapped in a blanket. But as you get closer to the capital, the trickle becomes a stream. It is a river of misery flowing toward the sun. There are hundreds of you. Men with bandaged necks, their eyes hollow with fatigue. Women whose faces are disfigured by the swelling. Old soldiers with old wounds that will not heal. You walk in a strange, silent camaraderie. You share your water. You nod to one another. You are united by a single, desperate purpose. You are the strumae, the scrofulous ones. The road is hard. The summer sun beats down, turning the dust into a choking powder that coats your skin and grits between your teeth. When it rains, the road turns to a thick, sucking mud that threatens to pull the shoes from your feet. But you keep moving. The image of the king pulls you forward like a magnet. Finally, after days of walking, you see it. Versailles. It rises from the landscape like a mountain of golden stone. It is unlike anything you have ever seen. In your village, the biggest building is the church with its simple stone tower. But this is a city unto itself. The fences are tipped with gold. The windows sparkle like diamonds in the afternoon light. The gardens stretch out further than your entire village's farmland, manicured into impossible, unnatural shapes of geometry and control. You feel small, you feel dirty. You are acutely aware of the dust on your clothes and the smell of your own unwashed body, but you are not turned away. This is the one day, the special feast day, perhaps Easter or Pentecost, when the gates are thrown open to the poor. You join the crowd gathering in the outer courtyards. The noise is a low, constant hum of thousands of voices praying, coughing, and whispering. The air is thick. It smells of unwashed wool, of old sweat, of open sores, and of garlic. But cutting through it all is the sharp, sweet scent of incense drifting from the palace chapel and the faint floral aroma of the orange trees in the orangery. The waiting is an endurance test of its own. You stand for hours, pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers. Your legs ache. Your head spins from hunger and the heat. But no one leaves. The anticipation holds you in place. Slowly the line moves. You pass through the great iron gates. You cross the cobblestones of the marble courtyard. You enter the palace. The transition is shocking. You step from the harsh, bright world of the outdoors into a space of cool, shadowed grandeur. The walls are lined with tapestries that depict scenes of battles and gods. The ceilings are painted with clouds and cherubs that look so real you expect them to float down. The floor is polished so bright you can see your own reflection in it. A ghostly, ragged figure moving through a dream. You are shepherded by guards who look at you with a mix of boredom and disdain. They keep the line moving. They ensure that you do not touch the tapestries or the statues. You are allowed to be here, but you are not of here. Finally, you enter the great gallery. The light here is golden, filtering through high windows. The air is heavy with perfume, musk, ambergris, and rosewater, pumped into the room to mask the smell of the sickness. And there, at the far end of the hall, stands the king. He is surrounded by a phalanx of physicians, priests, and high-ranking nobles. They stand in a semicircle, creating a protective barrier of silk and velvet. But the king stands slightly apart. He looks different than you imagined. He is not a giant. He is a man. He wears a coat of dark velvet, embroidered with silver thread. He wears a wig of cascading curls that falls over his shoulders. His face is pale, powdered white, with patches of rouge on his cheeks to simulate health. But if you look closely, and you are looking closely with the intensity of a drowning man looking at a lifeline, you can see the fatigue. The king is tired. This is his duty, his burden. On this day, he is expected to touch not just you, but 2,000 people. 2,000 sick, smelling, desperate people. He has been standing there for hours. His arm must be aching, his legs must be heavy. But he does not stop. He cannot stop. If he stops, the illusion breaks. If he refuses to touch his people, he admits that he is just a man. And that is the one admission a king can never make. The line shuffles forward. You are 10 people away, then 5, then 2. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You feel a wave of dizziness. You are about to touch the state. You are about to touch God's shadow. The person in front of you, a young woman with a terrible swelling on her jaw, kneels. The king steps forward. He does not flinch. He does not wear gloves. To wear gloves would be to insulate the power, to block the flow of grace. He reaches out his right hand. His fingers are long, white, and manicured. He places the back of his hand, not the palm but the back, gently against the woman's cheek. He lifts his eyes to the ceiling, to heaven. He speaks. His voice is a low drone, a sound that has lost all meaning through repetition, becoming a pure vibration of ritual. Le roi te touche, Dieu te guérit. The king touches you, God heals you. The woman sobs a sharp intake of breath and is helped to her feet by a guard. She is led away, clutching something in her hand. Now it is your turn. You step forward. The marble is hard beneath your knees. You lower your head, exposing your neck, exposing your shame, exposing the ugly throbbing knot of the evil. You squeeze your eyes shut. You wait. And then you feel it. The touch is shockingly cool. The king's skin is smooth, dry, and cool against the feverish heat of your infection. It is a gentle touch. There is no pressure. It is a fleeting contact, lighter than a falling leaf. For a split second, time seems to stop. The noise of the court fades away. The pain in your neck seems to vibrate, responding to the contact. Is it the power of God flowing into you? Is it the shock of the moment? Or is it simply the overwhelming, intoxicating power of belief? You hear the words spoken directly above you. Le roi te touche, Dieu te guérit. Then the hand pulls away. The connection is broken. You open your eyes. The king is already looking past you to the next person in line. His face is a mask of impassive benevolence. He has done his part. Now you must do yours. You must believe. A treasurer, standing beside the king, presses something into your hand. It is a small coin, a gold angel, or perhaps a silver piece depending on the year. It is pierced with a hole, strung on a white silk ribbon. This is the touch piece. It is not just charity, it is a talisman. You are meant to wear it around your neck over the sickness. It is a physical battery of the king's power. Something to continue the cure long after you have left the palace. You are helped to your feet. Your legs feel shaky, like jelly. You stumble away, guided by the guards, back out of the golden light, back through the corridors, and out into the courtyard. You clutch the coin tightly in your fist. The metal bites into your palm. It is real. It happened. As you walk back out the gates, the sun is beginning to set. The sky is a bruised purple and orange. The long walk home begins. The question that lingers in the cool evening air is this: were you cured? In the days that follow, you will wear the coin every moment. You will sleep with it. You will pray to it. and perhaps the swelling will go down. Perhaps the natural course of the disease will turn. The immune system will finally gain the upper hand and the sores will close. If they do, you will tell everyone you meet that the king saved you. You will show them the scar and the coin. You will become a living testament to the divine right of the monarchy. You will tell your children and your grandchildren about the day the Sun King placed his cool hand on your burning neck. But perhaps the swelling will not go down. Perhaps it will grow. Perhaps the fever will return, hotter than before. If that happens, you will not blame the king. You will blame yourself. You will think your faith was not strong enough. You will think you were not worthy of the miracle. Because in this world, the king cannot fail. The system cannot be wrong. The failure can only be yours. This ritual, this royal touch, continued for centuries. It was performed in France and in England. It was a massive logistical operation of public health and political theater. It bound the peasant to the palace in a cycle of suffering and hope. It reminds us that in the boring history of the past, medicine was not just a transaction of drugs and surgery. It was a transaction of the soul. It was a deeply psychological event. The placebo effect, triggered by the overwhelming grandeur of Versailles and the presence of the monarch, was a powerful drug in its own right. As you walk home in the twilight, the coin swinging against your chest, you are part of a vast, silent army of the touched. You are a witness to the strange, desperate intimacy between the ruler and the ruled. But as the 18th century approaches, this magic will begin to fade. The physicians will start to look closer at the fluids and the tissues, and less at the stars and the souls. The silver knife of Felix has already cut a hole in the old ways. The world is becoming mechanical. The body is becoming a machine, and machines can break in strange ways. We are leaving the quiet individual suffering of the scrofula patient now. We are leaving the orderly, ritualized world of the royal touch. We are going to travel back a little further in time, to a place where the order completely collapsed. We are going to a place where the body did not just swell or bleed, but where it moved. Where it moved without permission. Where it moved until it broke. The king is safe in his palace. The peasant is quiet in his cottage. But in the narrow streets of a German city, a different kind of fever is rising. It is not a fever of the blood. It is a fever of the rhythm. The shadows are lengthening. The night is coming. And in the distance you can hear the sound of feet, not marching, not walking, but dancing. Prepare yourself. We are going to Strasbourg. The year is 1518, and the music is about to start. We are leaving the polished marble floors of Versailles. We are leaving the scent of orange blossoms and the soft velvet silence of the king's bedchamber. The orderly world of the royal touch, where a single gesture could supposedly cure a disease, is fading into the distance. Now we must travel back in time just over a century and a half to a place where order has completely collapsed. We are going to the Holy Roman Empire, specifically to the city of Strasbourg. The year is 1518. Adjust your mindset. We are no longer in the realm of the elite. We are descending into the realm of the desperate. The first thing you notice here is the heat. It is July, but it is not the golden, nourishing summer of a pastoral painting. It is an oppressive, suffocating blanket of heat that hangs over the city like a physical weight. The air is stagnant. It doesn't move. It sits heavy in the narrow, winding alleys, trapped between the timber-framed houses that lean toward each other as if conspiring. The sky above is not blue. It is a pale, washed-out white, bleached by the intensity of the sun. There are no clouds to offer relief. The sun beats down on the clay roof tiles, baking them until they radiate heat long into the night. The cobblestones beneath your feet are warm to the touch. The city feels like a kiln, but the heat is only one layer of the suffering. As you walk through these streets, careful to avoid the open drains that run down the center of the road, carrying the waste of thousands, you see the faces of the people. They are gaunt. Their eyes are hollow, set deep in dark sockets. Their skin is pulled tight over their cheekbones. Strasbourg is starving. For years, the harvest has failed. The winters have been too cold, the springs too wet, and the summers too dry. The grain stores are empty. The price of bread has skyrocketed to a level that makes a simple loaf a luxury for the wealthy. The poor are eating scraps. They are boiling old cabbage stalks. They are scraping the mold off stale crusts. Some are eating bread made from rye that has been infected with ergot, a fungus that causes hallucinations and convulsions. There is a palpable tension in the air, a vibration of anxiety that is almost audible. The people are terrified. They are terrified of starvation, yes, but they are also terrified of God. In the medieval mind, a famine is not a meteorological event, it is a punishment. It is a sign that they have sinned, that they have failed, that the Almighty has turned his face away from them. The church bells toll the hours, a mournful, heavy sound that echoes off the stone walls. The priests preach sermons of fire and brimstone, urging repentance. The atmosphere is primed. It is a powder keg of religious guilt, physical exhaustion, and psychological terror. And into this powder keg, a spark is about to fall. It happens on a day like any other in this season of misery. It is mid-July. The exact date is debated, but let us place ourselves there on a Tuesday morning. The sun is already high, baking the dust of the streets. A door opens. Out of a modest house steps a woman. Her name is Frau Trophäa. History has recorded her name, but it has recorded little else about her. We do not know if she was a mother. We do not know her age. We do not know what she was doing moments before she opened that door. Was she arguing with her husband? Was she looking at an empty cupboard, despairing over the lack of food? Was she praying? She steps out into the narrow street. She is likely wearing the dress of a commoner, heavy wool or linen, stained with the dust of the city, a white cap covering her hair. She looks ordinary. There is nothing to mark her as the patient zero of a historical catastrophe. She walks to the center of the lane, and then she stops. She looks up at the blinding white sky. She looks down at the stones, and then she begins to move. It starts slowly. A twitch of the foot, a shifting of weight. Left, right, left, right. It looks at first like she is trying to shake something off her shoe, a pebble perhaps. But the movement does not stop. It finds a rhythm. It grows. She begins to hop. It is not a graceful hop. It is a heavy, flat-footed landing. Thump. Then the other foot. Thump. Her arms begin to move. They do not sway with the elegance of a dancer at a ball. They jerk. They flail outward, then pull back in as if she is fighting an invisible current. Her torso twists. Her head lolls back on her neck, her eyes staring blankly at the eaves of the houses above. She is dancing. But you must erase the modern concept of dance from your mind. When we think of dance, we think of music, of joy, of expression, of social connection. We think of weddings and festivals. This is none of those things. There is no music. The street is silent save for the distant barking of a dog and the low murmur of the city. There are no fiddlers. There are no drums. Frau Trophäa is dancing to a rhythm that only she can hear. It is a silent, internal metronome that is driving her body with a terrifying, mechanical precision. Her husband comes out of the house. We can imagine his confusion. He sees his wife spinning in the street, kicking up dust. "Woman," he might call out, his voice thick with the irritability of the heat. "What are you doing? Come inside. It is too hot." She does not answer. She does not even look at him. It is as if he does not exist. She is locked in a trance. Her face is not a face of joy. It is a mask of concentration, or perhaps a mask of blank, empty horror. Her mouth might be slightly open, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Ha ha, ha ha. She spins, she stamps, she leaps. The neighbors begin to gather. In a medieval city there is no privacy. The street is the living room. People lean out of their windows, resting their elbows on the sills. Others stop in their tracks, baskets of laundry or empty market sacks in their hands. They watch. They whisper. "Is she drunk?" one might ask. "Has she taken leave of her senses?" asks another. "Is it a fit?" But fits usually end. A seizure is violent, but short. This does not end. Minutes pass, 10 minutes, 20, an hour. The sun climbs higher. The shadows shorten. The heat intensifies. Sweat begins to darken Frau Trophäa's dress. It runs down her face, stinging her eyes. But she does not wipe it away. She does not stop to drink. She does not stop to rest. She continues to dance. As the afternoon wears on, the spectacle shifts from confusion to concern, and then to a creeping dread. The physical exertion of what she is doing is immense. Try to imagine it. Try to imagine jumping and spinning in heavy wool clothing, in 30-degree heat, without water for 4 hours straight. Your muscles would scream, your lungs would burn, your heart would hammer against your ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct in your body would scream at you to stop, to lie down, to conserve energy. But Frau Trophäa defies biology. She defies the limits of human endurance. Her husband is now frantic. He tries to approach her. Perhaps he tries to grab her arm to stop her. But she pulls away with surprising strength. Or perhaps she simply spins out of his grasp, her momentum carrying her forward. She is like a spinning top that cannot be toppled. The sound of her dancing becomes the only sound in the street. Scuff, scuff, thump, scuff, scuff, thump. It is a monotonous, grinding noise. The leather of her shoes scrapes against the granite cobblestones. By evening her feet must be blistering. The skin is rubbing raw against the leather. Blood begins to seep into her socks, but the pain does not register. Or if it does, it is disconnected from her will. It is just another sensation to be ignored. The sun begins to set. The sky turns a bruised purple. The air cools slightly, but the stones are still warm. Frau Trophäa is still dancing. She has been moving for 6, maybe 7 hours. She is a wreck. Her hair has come loose from her cap and hangs in damp, matted strands around her face. Her skin is flushed a deep, alarming crimson. Her eyes are rolled back, showing the whites. She looks like a woman possessed, and that is the word that begins to circulate through the crowd. Possessed. They cross themselves. They mutter prayers. In 1518, the devil is as real as the baker. Demons are everywhere. They hide in the shadows, they hide in the wind. Has a demon taken hold of Frau Trophäa? Is this a punishment for some secret sin? Finally, deep in the night, the collapse comes. It is not a decision. It is a biological failure. Her legs simply cease to function. She crumbles to the ground, hitting the stones with a heavy thud. She lies there, twitching, her chest heaving violently as she gasps for air. She is unconscious, or perhaps just too exhausted to move. Her husband, weeping now, scoops her up. He carries her inside. He lays her on their straw mattress. He likely tries to give her water, dripping it between her cracked lips. The street is empty again. The neighbors go back to their beds. They blow out their candles. They tell themselves that the madness is over. It was a strange day, a frightening day. But surely after a night's sleep, sanity will return. They are wrong. The next morning, the sun rises again. The heat returns unrelenting. Frau Trophäa wakes up. Her body must be agony. Every muscle must be seized with cramps. Her feet are raw. She is dehydrated. She is weak from hunger. But she stands up. She walks to the door. She opens it, and she begins to dance. The horror of the second day is worse than the first, because on the second day, the impossible happens. She is not alone. It starts with a neighbor. Perhaps it is a woman who watched her for hours the day before. Perhaps it is a young man. The records are not specific on who was second, but they are specific on the fact that it happened. A person standing in the crowd, watching the rhythmic, jerking movements of Frau Trophäa, feels a twitch. It starts in the leg, a restless energy, a need to move. It is an itch that is deep under the skin, deep in the marrow of the bone. They try to suppress it. They grip their hands together. They plant their feet firmly on the ground. But the urge is stronger than their will. The rhythm of Frau Trophäa's feet, thump, thump, scuff, acts like a hypnotic induction. It bypasses the conscious mind and speaks directly to the motor centers of the brain. The neighbor steps out. There is a gasp from the crowd. No, someone whispers. But yes, the neighbor begins to hop. They begin to spin. Their face goes slack, mirroring the blank, terrified expression of Frau Trophäa. Now there are 2, then 3. By the end of the week, there are 30 people dancing in the street. 30 people. Imagine the noise. It is no longer a solitary scuffing, it is a cacophony. It is a chaotic, deafening clatter of wooden clogs and leather shoes striking stone. The dust rises in a thick, choking cloud that hangs over the dancers, obscuring them in a yellow haze. The smell is overpowering. 30 bodies, unwashed, sweating profusely in the summer heat. Their feet bleeding, their bodies breaking down. The air reeks of sour sweat, urine, and fear. They are a grotesque troupe. They are of all ages. There are grandmothers dancing alongside teenagers. There are sturdy laborers dancing alongside frail seamstresses. They do not look at each other. They do not hold hands. Each of them is trapped in their own private rhythmic hell. They collide with each other. They knock each other down. But those who fall scramble back up, driven by the compulsion, and rejoin the fray. The city of Strasbourg stops. Normal life ceases. The shops close. The markets empty. Everyone comes to watch the horror. The crowd is a mixture of terror and fascination. They are witnessing a plague, but not a plague of sores or coughs. It is a plague of movement. It is a contagion of the mind. The city council is in a panic. The magistrates, serious men in heavy velvet robes, gather in the guild hall. They are men of logic, men of business. They understand ledgers, taxes, and trade routes. They do not understand this. What is it? They ask. Is it a crime? Are they disrupting the peace? They cannot stop, comes the report. They are dying, and they are. By the end of the week, the first bodies begin to fall and do not get up. Hearts burst, veins rupture. The human body is not an endless engine. Without water, without food, without rest, the systems fail. A man collapses in the middle of a pirouette. He is dead before he hits the ground. The dancers around him do not stop to mourn. They step over his corpse. Their feet kick his limbs as they spin. The council summons the physicians. We have met these men before. They are the same breed of university-educated doctors who treated the king's fistula and prescribed the leeches. They arrive at the scene, holding pomanders of spices to their noses to ward off the smell. They observe the dancers with a clinical detachment. They consult their books. They look at the stars, and they come to a conclusion that fits their worldview. It is not a curse, they declare. It is a natural disease. They call it hot blood. The theory goes like this. The intense heat of the summer has caused the blood in the victims' bodies to boil. The humors are overheated. The brain is cooking. The body in its natural wisdom is trying to expel this excess heat through movement. The dancing is not the disease. It is the cure. It is a physiological venting mechanism. They must dance it out, the physicians advise the council. If they stop, the hot blood will congeal in their hearts and kill them. They must continue until the fever breaks. This diagnosis, delivered with the absolute confidence of the learned elite, leads the city council to make one of the most catastrophic decisions in the history of public health. They decide that the problem is that the dancers are not dancing enough. They decide that the cure needs to be accelerated. They decide to turn the street into a stage. Clear the grain market. The order goes out. Build a platform. They believe that if they can organize the dancing, if they can support it, the victims will burn through the hot blood faster and recover. They treat it like a fever that must be sweated out, but they do not understand the psychology of the event. They do not understand that this is not a biological fever, but a mass psychogenic illness, a collective hysterical disorder triggered by extreme stress, religious fear, and starvation. By validating the dancing, by giving it a space, they are about to pour gasoline on a fire. As the sun sets on the first week of the plague, the carpenters are hammering nails into wood. They are building a massive dance floor in the center of the city. The sound of the hammers mixes with the sound of the feet. Bang, bang, bang. Thump, thump, thump. And in the shadows, the guild of musicians is being summoned. The council has hired fifers. They have hired drummers. They have hired horn players. They are going to provide a soundtrack for the madness. You are standing there, in the twilight of 1518. You look at the exhausted, bleeding figures still jerking in the street. You look at the stage being built, and you realize with a sinking feeling that the torture is about to become a spectacle. The silence of the first days is about to be broken by music, and that music will not bring relief, it will bring a massacre. This was the treatment for the dancing plague. Not restraint, not water, not rest, but more dancing. We are about to witness how the city of Strasbourg, in an attempt to save its citizens, accidentally created a death machine. The decision has been made. The City Council of Strasbourg, in their velvet robes and their infinite misguided wisdom, have signed the decree. They have consulted the physicians, the men of the university, who speak in Latin and chart the movements of the stars, and they have accepted the diagnosis of hot blood. The logic to them is ironclad. The citizens are boiling from the inside. The movement is a natural vent. Therefore, to stop the movement would be fatal. To cure the city, they must encourage the purge. They must facilitate the frenzy. And so the construction begins. Imagine yourself standing in the Cornmarkt, the grain market of Strasbourg. It is normally a place of commerce, a place of sacks and wagons, of shouting merchants and haggling housewives. But today, the commerce has stopped. The square has been cleared. The heat is still a physical weight, pressing down on the rooftops. It is the kind of heat that shimmers off the stones, distorting the air. Into this stifling atmosphere come the carpenters. You can hear them before you see them. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud of hammers. The sharp rasp of saws cutting through timber. They are building a platform. It is not a scaffold for an execution, though in time it will serve a similar purpose. It is a stage, a dance floor. They bring in heavy planks of pine and oak. The smell of the fresh sawdust, sharp, resinous, and clean, mingles strangely with the sour, cloying odor of the sweating crowd and the open sewers. The carpenters work quickly, their shirts soaked through, wiping grit from their eyes. They are building a structure large enough to hold 50, perhaps 100 people. They raise the supports. They nail down the floorboards. They are creating a focused space, a theater for the madness. They believe they are building a hospital bed of sorts, a place for recovery. But what they are actually building is a machine for exhaustion. As the sun climbs toward its zenith on the 4th or 5th day of the plague, the stage is finished. The wood is pale and bright against the dark, grime-stained stones of the surrounding buildings. Now comes the next phase of the treatment. The City Council has not just authorized the space, they have authorized a soundtrack. They believe that if the dancers are provided with a steady rhythmic beat, they will be able to synchronize their movements. They believe this will make the venting of the hot blood more efficient. So they summon the Guild of Musicians. Imagine these men. They are professionals. They play at weddings, at guild feasts, at the festivals of the saints. They are used to seeing people dance with joy, with wine-flushed cheeks and laughter. They arrive at the grain market carrying their instruments. There are pipers, holding their long wooden flutes. There are drummers, their instruments strapped to their chests, the leather skins of the drums tight and ready. There might be a horn player, his brass instrument gleaming dully in the haze. They are paid to play. They are given a job. Keep the rhythm. Don't let the beat drop. If the dancers slow down, speed them up. They take their positions on the edge of the stage. The leader of the band nods. He raises his pipe to his lips. The drummer raises his sticks, and the music begins. It is a lively tune. It has to be. It is a tune meant for a celebration. It is quick, upbeat, a melody that under normal circumstances would make you tap your foot or clap your hands. The high, piercing notes of the fife cut through the heavy, stagnant air of the city. The drum provides a driving, relentless bass line. Boom-tat-tat, boom-tat-tat. The dancers, the 30 or 40 wretched souls who have been hopping in the dirt, are herded onto the new platform. They stumble up the wooden steps, their limbs jerking, their heads lolling. When their feet hit the wooden boards, the sound changes. It is no longer the dull scuff of stone. It is a hollow, resonant drumming. The wood amplifies the impact. The sound of 50 pairs of feet striking the timber creates a thundering, chaotic rhythm that competes with the musicians. At first, the council members watching from the balcony of the guild hall nod in approval. Look, they might say, and it is working. They are moving faster. And they are. The music acts as a stimulant. The human brain is hardwired to entrain to a rhythm. Even in their delirium, even in their state of profound physical collapse, the dancers' bodies respond to the beat. The drumming bypasses their conscious will and hot wires their motor cortex. They spin faster. They leap higher. The energy in the square shifts. It becomes frantic. The cure is pouring gasoline on the fire. The music does not soothe the hot blood. It excites it. It drives the adrenaline deeper into their exhausted systems. It pushes them past the point of pain, past the point of injury, into a state of pure, chemically fueled automatism. Imagine the sensory experience of being on that stage. You are surrounded by bodies. The heat is intensified by the crush of people. You are breathing in the exhalations of 50 other starving, dehydrated humans. The smell is atrocious. Sweat, fear, unwashed clothes, and the metallic tang of blood. Your feet are agony. The leather of your shoes has long since worn through. The rough wood of the fresh planks acts like sandpaper. Splinters work their way into your soles. Blisters form, burst, and form again. Blood begins to smear on the pale wood, leaving dark, slippery streaks that make the footing treacherous. But you cannot stop. The drum is beating, boom, tat-tat. It commands you, move, move, move. Your heart is racing, 160, 180 beats per minute. It has been racing for days. The muscles in your calves and thighs are tearing. The lactic acid buildup is burning like fire. But the trance, fueled by the music and the mass hysteria, disconnects you from the pain. You are a passenger in a runaway carriage. The tragedy of the stage is that it turns the plague into a spectacle. By elevating the dancers, by framing them with music, the council has created a magnet. People come from all over the city to watch. They leave their shops, they leave their homes. They gather in the grain market, pressing tight against the edge of the platform. They stare up at the dancers with a mix of horror and morbid fascination. And this is where the psychological contagion spreads. We know now that the dancing plague was likely a case of mass psychogenic illness. It relies on a shared belief system and visual triggers. Seeing someone else in the grip of the trance, seeing the intensity of their movement, acts as a trigger for the observer's own anxieties. You are standing in the crowd. You are hungry. You are terrified of God's wrath. You are exhausted by the heat. You hear the relentless drumbeat. You see the glazing eyes of the dancers, and you feel the twitch. It starts in your foot, a small, involuntary spasm. You try to hold it still. You grab your leg, but the music gets inside you. The fear gets inside you. You feel the urge to join them, not because you want to, but because it feels inevitable. It feels like the spirit is grabbing you. You climb the stairs. You step onto the bloody wood, and you surrender. The numbers swell. 50 becomes 100. 100 becomes 200. The stage is overflowing. They have to open up the marketplace again. They have to clear the streets, leading into the square. The infection of movement radiates outward like ripples in a pond. The musicians play on. They are sweating now, tired themselves. They swap out. When one piper gets winded, another takes his place. The music must not stop. The cure must be administered continuously. Night falls, but the city does not sleep. Torches are lit around the stage, casting long, flickering shadows that dance on the walls of the cathedral. The scene looks like a vision of hell painted by Hieronymus Bosch. Twisted limbs, expressions of anguish, the red glow of firelight, the relentless, manic motion. And then the dying begins in earnest. The human body is an incredible machine, capable of immense endurance. But it obeys the laws of physics and biology. It requires water. It requires electrolytes. It requires rest to repair the micro tears in the muscles and to flush the toxins from the blood. The dancers have had none of this. A man in the center of the stage, a sturdy tanner perhaps, suddenly stops hopping. He does not slow down. He simply drops. It is as if his strings have been cut. He hits the boards hard. The dancers around him do not stop. They cannot. They bump into his body, stumbling, correcting their balance and continuing their spin. The musicians falter for a second, seeing the body, but the council officials wave them on. Keep playing, he has just fainted. The others must be saved. But he has not fainted. His heart, driven to an impossible rate for days on end, has finally given out. He has suffered a massive cardiac arrest. He is dead before his face hits the wood. Then a woman falls, then a child. The cure is killing them. The scene on the stage turns grimly practical. Men are assigned to watch the dancers, not to stop them, but to drag away the fallen. They dart in between the spinning figures, grabbing the arms or legs of those who collapse, dragging them off the stage like sacks of grain. They check for a pulse. If there is one, they pour water over the victim's face. If there isn't, they pile the body onto a cart waiting in the shadows. The death toll rises. Chronicles from the time claim that at the height of the plague, 15 people were dying per day. 15 people. That is a massacre. That is a slow-motion battle taking place in the center of a city with no weapons, only shoes and a drumbeat. The guild of musicians begins to feel the horror of their task. Imagine being the drummer. You are beating a rhythm, and every few minutes you watch someone die to that rhythm. You are providing the tempo for their destruction, but you are under orders. You are afraid that if you stop, the council will blame you for the deaths of those who remain. So you keep playing. Boom tat tat, boom tat tat. The hot blood theory is collapsing before their eyes. The more they dance, the weaker they get. The more they dance, the more they die. The physicians stand on the sidelines, wringing their hands, their Latin theories useless against the reality of the bodies piling up on the carts. Finally, after days of this orchestrated slaughter, the council realizes their mistake. The stage was a mistake. The music was a mistake. They have not cured the plague. They have industrialized it. The mood in the council chamber shifts from scientific arrogance to superstitious terror. They realize that this is not a disease of the blood. It is something darker. It is something spiritual. The physicians have failed us, the head magistrate declares, his voice trembling. This is not the work of nature. This is the work of a saint. They look at the calendar. They look at the symptoms, and they whisper the name. Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus is a Sicilian martyr, a patron saint of dancers and entertainers. But in the medieval mind, saints are not just benevolent figures who grant wishes. They are powerful, vengeful entities who demand respect. If you anger a saint, they can strike you down. They can curse you. The logic shifts instantly. The dancers are not sick with hot blood. They are cursed. They have angered Saint Vitus, perhaps by dancing in front of his statue, or by swearing, or simply by living in a city of sinners. The saint has taken hold of their bodies and is forcing them to dance until they have atoned. And if the cause is spiritual, the cure must be spiritual. The order goes out, stop the music. The silence that falls over the grain market is sudden and shocking. The pipes stop. The drums stop. The musicians lower their instruments, relief washing over them. But the dancers do not stop. Not yet. They continue to shuffle and stomp in the silence, their breathing ragged, their feet scraping the bloody wood. But without the driving beat, the energy begins to dissipate. The frenetic, hypnotic edge dulls. The council issues a new decree. The stage is to be dismantled. The dancers are not to be kept in the square. They are to be moved. Take them to the shrine, the order says. There is a shrine to Saint Vitus deep in the Vosges mountains, in a town called Saverne, miles away from Strasbourg. It is a holy place, a place of pilgrimage. The solution is no longer a medical purge. It is a forced pilgrimage. And so begins the final sorrowful chapter of this event. The survivors, the ones who haven't danced themselves to death on the wooden stage, are rounded up. They are in a state of delirium. They are barely human anymore, reduced to twitching, emaciated wrecks. They are loaded into wagons, but not just any wagons. The council, in a final attempt to appease the angry saint, orders that the dancers be dressed in red. Why red? Red is the color of the saint. It is the color of blood and fire. They are given red shoes. They are given small crosses to hold. Imagine the procession leaving the city gates. The wagons creak along the dusty road. Inside, the victims are still twitching, their feet moving against the floorboards of the carts, dancing even while sitting down. The smell of the city fades, replaced by the cool air of the mountains. They are being taken to a cave, to a dark, cool sanctuary where they will be forced to plead for their lives. But as the wagons roll away, leaving the silent, blood-stained stage in the grain market behind, the people of Strasbourg are left with a terrifying question. Why did it happen? Was it really St. Vitus? Was it the heat? Or was it simply the breaking point of the human mind? As we prepare to follow them into the mountains, to the dark shrine where the final exorcism will take place, we must understand one thing. The mind is a powerful place, and its boundaries are fragile. When pushed by hunger, by fear, and by belief, it can destroy the body that houses it. The music has stopped, but for the people in the wagons, the internal rhythm is still beating. We are going to the shrine now. We are going to see how the Middle Ages treated a curse, and we are going to see the end of the dance. The relentless, thundering drum beat of the grain market has finally ceased. The wooden stage, stained with the sweat and blood of the fallen, stands silent in the early morning light. The city of Strasbourg, exhausted by its own panic, watches through shuttered windows as the final act of this tragedy begins. It is a departure. We are leaving the suffocating heat of the city streets. We are leaving the narrow alleys where the smell of fear and sewage has hung heavy for weeks. We are joining a procession that is slowly, painfully winding its way out of the city gates and into the open country. It is a caravan of the broken. Imagine the scene. A line of wooden carts, the kind usually used for hauling sacks of grain or bundles of hay, creaks along the dusty road. They are drawn by heavy, plodding workhorses, their heads low, their breath steaming in the cool air of dawn. The wheels of the carts are rimmed with iron, and they grind against the stones of the road with a low, rhythmic rumble that vibrates through the entire frame of the vehicle. Inside these wagons sit the survivors. They are the dancers of Strasbourg, but they look nothing like dancers now. They are skeletal figures, huddled together for warmth and support. Their faces are gaunt, stripped of all fat by the weeks of relentless exertion. Their eyes are sunken deep into bruised, dark sockets, staring out at the passing fields with a vacuous, glassy intensity. They are in a twilight state, hovering somewhere between waking and comatose, their bodies utterly depleted of energy, yet still held hostage by the residual current of the curse. If you look closely at them as the wagons pass, you will see that they are not still. Even sitting down, even wrapped in rough wool blankets, they are moving. It is a phantom rhythm. A foot twitches against the floorboards. A hand taps a silent beat against a knee. A head bobs imperceptibly. The neural pathways in their brains have been fired so continuously, so violently, for so long that they cannot simply switch off. They are echoing. They are vibrating with the memory of the drum. And there is something else that marks them out, something vivid and disturbing against the drab browns and grays of the wagons. The red shoes. The city council, in their desperate attempt to appease the saint they believe has cursed them, has dressed the victims in red. It is the color of St. Vitus. It is the color of fire, of blood, and of martyrdom. It is a visual signal to the heavens. We acknowledge the fire. We submit to the fire. Seeing these emaciated, twitching figures dressed in the bright, cheerful color of a festival is a jarring sight. It underscores the grotesque nature of the event, a celebration turned into a funeral procession. The journey is slow. The road leads away from the Rhine Valley, away from the flat, baking plains, and up toward the foothills of the Vosges Mountains. As the elevation climbs, the atmosphere begins to change. This journey is a crucial part of the cure. Though the magistrates likely do not understand why, it is a sensory reset. For weeks, these people have been trapped in a sensory overload. The noise of the drums, the shouting of the crowd, the heat of the sun, the smell of the city. Now the world is quieting down, the air growing cooler as they ascend. The smell of the city is replaced by the smell of damp earth, of crushed pine needles, of wet stone. The harsh white glare of the sun is filtered through the canopy of the ancient forest. Great oaks and firs that cast long, soothing shadows across the road. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of their feet on the stage is replaced by the irregular, organic sounds of the forest. The call of a raven, the rustle of wind in the branches, the crunch of the wagon wheels on gravel. Deep in their exhausted minds, the grip of the hysteria begins to loosen. The external triggers are gone. The stage is gone. The audience is gone. There is only the motion of the cart and the green silence of the woods. They are heading for Saverne, a town nestled in the mountains, and specifically to the grotto of St. Vitus. This is a place of ancient power. It is not a soaring cathedral built by man. It is a hollow in the earth, a cave in the red sandstone cliffs that has been sanctified by generations of belief. The wagons arrive at the trailhead. The victims are helped down. Some cannot walk. Their feet are destroyed, covered in blisters and open sores that have bled into the red leather of their shoes. They are supported by priests and attendants, half carried, half dragged up the path to the shrine. The air here is cold. It is a shock to the system after the furnace of Strasbourg. It bites at their skin, waking them from their delirium. They enter the grotto. The cave is dim, lit only by hundreds of votive candles that have been left by previous pilgrims. The air is thick with the smell of beeswax and frankincense, a heavy, resinous scent that calms the nerves. The walls of the cave are blackened by centuries of soot. In the center stands the wooden statue of St. Vitus, a young man with a palm branch, looking down with an expression of serene, detached judgment. The priests of the shrine take over now. They are different from the university doctors. They do not talk of humors or blood. They talk of penance. The ritual they perform is simple but psychologically profound. It is a ritual of transfer. The dancers are led in a slow, shuffling procession around the altar. They are given small wooden crosses to hold. They are told to pray, to beg the saint for release. Saint Vitus, the chant goes, echoing off the low stone ceiling. Accept this suffering. Release your servants. And then, the moment of the cure. They are told to take off the red shoes. Think about the symbolism of this. For weeks, the movement of their feet has been the source of their torture. Their feet have been the enemies, the rebellious parts of their bodies that refuse to obey. By removing the shoes and placing them at the base of the statue, they are externalizing the curse. They are taking the dancing off their bodies and giving it to the saint. They pile the red shoes, stained, worn, misshapen, in a heap before the wooden figure. It is done, the priest declares. You are forgiven. And because they believe the priest, and because they believe in the saint, and because their bodies are pushed beyond the absolute limit of endurance, they stop. The twitching ceases. The frantic electrical need to move evaporates. The circuit is broken. They collapse. They do not die. They sleep. They lie down on the cold, hard stone floor of the cave, wrapped in their blankets, and they fall into a sleep so deep it is almost like death. It is the sleep of total biological reboot. As they sleep in the shadows of the grotto, safe at last from the rhythm, we have the luxury of looking back at this event with modern eyes. What really happened in Strasbourg in the summer of 1518? For a long time, historians and scientists looked for a chemical culprit. The most common theory was ergotism. Ergot is a mold that grows on damp rye. In the Middle Ages, during wet summers and bad harvests, it would often end up in the flour used to make bread. Ergot contains lysergic acid, the raw material for LSD. Poisoning from ergot, known as St. Anthony's fire, causes terrifying symptoms: hallucinations, burning sensations in the limbs, and convulsions. It seems like a perfect explanation. The people were starving. They ate bad bread. They went mad. But there is a flaw in the theory. Ergotism restricts blood flow to the extremities. It causes gangrene. It can cause you to lose your fingers and toes. It causes uncoordinated, violent seizures. It does not allow you to perform coordinated rhythmic movements for days on end. A person with ergot poisoning could not dance. They would be writhing on the ground in agony, unable to walk, let alone pirouette. So, if it wasn't the bread, what was it? The answer lies in the most complex and mysterious organ in the human body, the brain. The dancing plague is now widely considered to be a textbook case of mass psychogenic illness, MPI, formerly known as mass hysteria. It sounds dismissive to say it was all in their heads, but in the Middle Ages the things in your head were as real as the ground beneath your feet. Consider the nocebo effect. We all know the placebo effect, where a sugar pill cures a headache because you believe it will. The nocebo effect is the dark twin. If you truly deeply believe that you have been cursed or that you are sick, your brain can manifest physical symptoms that are indistinguishable from organic disease. It can cause paralysis, blindness, pain, and yes, uncontrollable movement. The people of Strasbourg were primed for this. Stress. They were living in a state of chronic crushing stress due to famine and disease. Their cortisol levels would have been through the roof, breaking down their psychological defenses. Belief. They believed in Saint Vitus. They knew the legend that he could punish sinners by making them dance. The script for the illness was already written in their culture. The trigger. When Frau Trophea started dancing, she provided the visual spark. The contagion. Human beings are empathetic creatures. We have mirror neurons in our brains that fire when we watch others. If you see someone yawn, you yawn. If you see someone vomit, you might feel nauseous. In the height of their terror, watching the dancers in the square, the observers' brains began to fire in sympathy. The fear of the curse became the curse itself. They felt the twitch, and because they feared the twitch, they focused on it, which made it stronger. It became a self-fulfilling loop of neurobiological feedback. The city council, by building the stage and hiring the musicians, accidentally created an amplification chamber. They turned a small outbreak into a massive spectacle, ensuring that everyone in the city was exposed to the visual trigger. They validated the delusion by treating it as a dance. They forced the victims to conform to that specific behavior. The shrine at Saverne worked because it treated the root cause, the belief. The red shoes were not a medical cure, but they were a psychological termination signal. The ritual told the subconscious mind, the debt is paid, you can stop now. The sleep in the cave lasts for hours, perhaps a full day. When the survivors wake, they are weak, they are dehydrated, their bodies are ravaged. Many of them will suffer from permanent injuries, torn tendons, stress fractures, damaged hearts. Some will never walk without a limp again, but the compulsion is gone. They are loaded back into the wagons. The red shoes are left behind, a pile of rotting leather in the darkness of the shrine. The journey back to Strasbourg is quiet. The wagons descend from the mountains back toward the heat of the valley, but the city they return to is not the same. It is a city that is ashamed. The stage in the grain market is quickly dismantled. The wood, stained with the fluids of the dying, is hauled away and burned. The musicians are paid and told to never speak of it. The city council goes back to their ledgers, trying to bury the memory of their disastrous intervention. The dancers return to their homes. Frau Trophea, if she survived, goes back to her kitchen. But they are marked. They are the touched. For the rest of their lives, they will be looked at with a mixture of pity and suspicion. They are the ones who were grabbed by the saint. And in the quiet moments of the night, or when a street performer plays a drum a little too loudly, they might feel a phantom twitch in their legs, a ghost of the rhythm, a reminder of how fragile the wall between sanity and madness really is. The dancing plague of 1518 fades. It becomes a footnote in the chronicles. The winter comes, burying the heat of that terrible summer under a layer of snow. The famine eventually lifts, but it remains one of the most haunting episodes of boring history. It serves as a reminder that suffering in the past wasn't just about wars and kings. It was about the daily grinding terror of existence. It was about the way the human mind, when pushed too far by hunger and fear, can break in the most surreal and terrifying ways. We have spent a long time now with the common people. We have walked in the mud with the peasants seeking the royal touch. We have sweated on the wooden stage with the starving citizens of Strasbourg. We have seen how the bodies of the poor were public property, exposed to the elements, to the crowds, and to the bizarre theories of the time. But you might be thinking, surely it was different for the rich. Surely if you were at the very top of the social pyramid, if you were a queen or a princess, you were safe from these indignities. Surely the elite enjoyed privacy, comfort, and the best medical care the world could offer. Surely their bodies were treated with respect and dignity. You would be wrong. In fact, you could argue that the higher up you went, the worse it got. For the elite, the body was not just a body, it was a political asset. It was a factory for producing heirs. And the management of that factory was a nightmare of surveillance, ritual, and public intrusion. We are going to leave the open air of the mountains. We are going to go inside. We are going to a room that is sealed tight against the world. A room that is pitch black even at midday. A room crowded with people who are watching your every breath, your every move, your every pain. We are going to the royal birthing chamber. Prepare yourself. The air is about to get very close. The darkness is about to close in. And the silence of the forest is about to be replaced by the whispers of a court that is waiting for you to perform the most dangerous act of your life. We have traveled a long way together tonight. We have walked the muddy, waste-strewn streets of medieval London to visit the barber-surgeon. We have stood on the polished parquet floors of Versailles, watching a king bite his lip in agony. We have trudged up the misty slopes of the Vosges Mountains with a caravan of exhausted dancers, witnessing the terrifying fragility of the human mind. In all these places we have seen suffering, but it is easy to tell ourselves that this suffering was a product of poverty, of ignorance, or of bad luck. We like to imagine that if you were at the very top of the social pyramid, if you were the one wearing the crown, the one eating off silver plates, the one sleeping in a bed of down feathers, you were safe. We like to imagine that wealth purchased comfort, that power purchased privacy, that the elite lived in a world of soft edges and gentle treatments. But tonight, as we enter the final leg of our journey, we must shatter that illusion. We are going to the most exclusive, the most expensive, and the most protected room in the medieval world. We are going to the Queen's bedchamber. But this is not a place of rest. It is not a sanctuary. As you will see, it is a high-stakes theater of biology, a place where the human body is not owned by the soul inhabiting it, but by the state. It is a place where care looks a lot like imprisonment, and where safety looks a lot like suffocation. So let us leave the cool, fresh air of the mountain forest behind. Let us step inside the thick stone walls of the palace. We are going back in time, to the late Middle Ages, perhaps the 15th or early 16th century, the era of the Tudors, the Valois, the Habsburgs. Imagine you are a queen. You are young. You are likely a foreigner in this court, having been traded in marriage to seal a treaty between nations. You are surrounded by luxury, tapestries woven with gold thread, goblets encrusted with gems, servants who bow when you pass. But you know with a chilling clarity that all of this luxury is conditional. It hangs on one single thread. You must produce an heir, specifically a male heir, a boy who will secure the succession, prevent civil war, and justify your existence. And now, the moment of truth is approaching. You are 7 or 8 months pregnant. Your body is heavy. Your ankles are swollen. In the modern world, this would be a time for gentle walks, for preparing a nursery, for quiet anticipation with your partner. But here, in the rigid, ritualized world of the court, your pregnancy is not a personal event. It is a national crisis, and the management of this crisis requires a protocol so strict, so stifling, and so bizarre to modern eyes that it borders on psychological torture. The time has come for the ritual known as taking to the chamber. It begins roughly a month before the baby is due. This is not a casual decision to rest. It is a formal ceremonial departure from the world. Imagine the day. You attend a special mass in the Chapel Royal. The court gathers. The dukes, the earls, the bishops. They pray for you. They pray for the fruit of your womb. You sip spiced wine and sweet cake, standing there in your heavy velvet gown, feeling the eyes of hundreds of people assessing the size of your belly, whispering their predictions. She carries low, they murmur. It must be a prince. She looks pale, they whisper. Will she survive? After the mass, a procession forms. You are escorted to your apartments, but you are not going to your usual rooms. You are going to a specific suite that has been prepared for the lying in. Once you cross the threshold of these rooms, the door is closed behind you, and it will not open again for the outside world until you have either produced a child or died trying. Let us look at this room. This is your home for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and the first thing you notice is the darkness. The medical theory of the time is obsessed with the dangers of the outside world. Fresh air is considered suspicious. It might carry miasmas, or cold drafts that could shock the womb and harm the infant. Light is considered overstimulating. The physicians believe that the eyes of a pregnant woman are weak, and that bright light could damage them, or even worse, that seeing something frightening or ugly could imprint a deformity onto the unborn child. So the room is sealed. Heavy tapestries, thick wool woven with complex scenes, are not just hung on the walls, they are often nailed over the windows. Every crack, every keyhole, every gap in the masonry is stopped up with cloth or wax. The goal is to create a hermetic seal, a womb within a womb. Even at midday, when the sun is shining bright in the courtyard outside, your world is pitch black. The only light comes from the fireplace and the candles. And the fire is always burning. Regardless of the season, whether it is the freezing depth of December or the sweltering heat of July, the fire must be kept roaring. Heat is associated with life, with blood, with health. Cold is the enemy. Cold is death. So the servants pile logs onto the hearth day and night. Imagine the atmosphere. You step into this room. The air hits you like a physical wall. It is hot, dry, and thick. It smells of wood smoke that has nowhere to go. It smells of melting beeswax from the expensive candles. It smells of lavender and dried herbs strewn on the floor to mask the inevitable odors of a sealed room. And beneath it all, the smell of human bodies, sweat, breath, and perfumes. Because you are not alone in this dark, hot box. Privacy is a luxury you cannot afford. In fact, privacy is dangerous. If you were left alone and something happened to the baby, you could be accused of foul play. You could be accused of swapping the child. You could be accused of witchcraft, so you must be watched. When the doors close, the men are excluded. The king says his goodbye. The male physicians wait in the antechamber or outside the palace entirely. This creates a purely female space, which sounds empowering until you realize the dynamic. You are locked in with your ladies. These are not just servants. They are high-ranking noblewomen. They are the wives and daughters of the most powerful men in the kingdom. They are there to serve you, yes, to bring you food, to brush your hair, to entertain you. But they are also there to report on you. They sleep in the room with you, on trundle beds or pallets on the floor. There is never a moment of silence. There is the rustle of silk, the click of rosary beads, the endless murmur of gossip. Did you hear about the Duke of Norfolk? Did you see the new silk arriving from Italy? They talk to keep the boredom at bay. But for you, the Queen, standing in the center of this sweltering twilight, the noise is constant. You cannot cry without an audience. You cannot sleep without someone listening to your breathing. You cannot use the chamber pot without someone handing it to you and then inspecting the contents. This is the privilege of the elite. A peasant woman in a cottage might be cold. She might be hungry, but she can walk out her door and look at the moon. She can have a moment of quiet with her husband. You, the Queen, are a prisoner of protocol. So what do? The confinement lasts for weeks before the birth. You are simply waiting for the pain, waiting for the event that will define your life. The days blur into the nights. Because the windows are blocked, you lose the rhythm of the sun. You eat when you are told. You sleep when you can. The biological clock begins to drift, adding a layer of surreal disorientation to the experience. You are encouraged to live a life of absolute passivity. Do not strain yourself, the midwives say. Do not think heavy thoughts. You play cards, you play chess, you might do some embroidery, straining your eyes in the candlelight to stitch flowers onto a christening gown that you hope will be used. You listen to music. Perhaps a lute player is allowed in the antechamber to play soft, soothing melodies through the open door, but mostly you think. And what you think about is death. This is the grim reality that sits in the corner of the room, darker than the shadows cast by the tapestries. In the Middle Ages and Renaissance, childbirth is the leading cause of death for young women. It is a battlefield, and wealth offers very little protection against the true killers, infection and obstruction. In fact, being rich might make it worse. The peasant woman has a robust immune system from working outside. You, the queen, have lived a sedentary life, eating rich foods, drinking wine instead of water, because water is unsafe. Your body is softened by luxury, and you know the statistics. You know your own mother might have died in childbirth. You know your cousins, your friends who vanished into the chamber and came out in a coffin. Elizabeth of York, the mother of Henry VIII, died of a post-birth infection on her birthday. Jane Seymour, the wife who finally gave Henry his son, died 12 days after the triumph. You sit in your chair, feeling the baby kick, a sensation that is both a joy and a threat. You look at the heavy velvet curtains, you look at the fire, and you prepare your soul. This is a standard part of the taking to the chamber ritual, the making of the will. Before the labor pains even start, you must put your affairs in order. You dictate letters to your family. You decide who gets your jewels, your lands, your favorite horses. You pay your debts. You make donations to the church to pay for masses to be said for your soul. It is a mournful, terrifying administrative task to perform while you are heavily pregnant. It forces you to stare directly into the abyss. You are getting ready to go to war, and you do not know if you will return. To keep your strength up, you are fed. But the diet of a confined queen is not the kale salads and vitamins of today. It is a diet based on the humoral theory of medicine. The physicians believe that labor is hot and wet. Therefore, you must be balanced with foods that are strengthening. You are brought caudle. This is the staple drink of the lying-in chamber. Imagine a thick, warm porridge. It is made of ale or wine mixed with breadcrumbs, oats, sugar, and spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. It is sometimes thickened with egg yolks. It is alcoholic. It is sugary. It is heavy. You drink this from a special two-handled cup, passed to you by a lady-in-waiting. You sip the warm, boozy sludge, feeling it settle in your stomach. It dulls the senses. It makes you lethargic. It adds to the feeling of being trapped in a dream. You eat rich meats, roasted capons, venison, beef. Vegetables are considered windy and peasant food, so they are avoided. Fruit is considered dangerous unless cooked, so you sit there in the heat, immobile, digesting heavy proteins and spiced wine, your body becoming sluggish, your mind becoming foggy. It is the exact opposite of the physical conditioning an athlete needs for a marathon. But childbirth is a marathon, and you are being prepped for it by being sedated and stuffed. Let us go deeper into this sensory experience. We have talked about the heat and the dark, but think about the tactile reality. The room is lined with textiles, tapestries on the walls, carpets on the tables, velvet curtains on the bed. Everything is soft, heavy, and dust-trapping. In a world without vacuum cleaners, without dry cleaning, these fabrics hold on to things. They hold on to smoke, they hold on to dust, they hold on to the microscopic particles of skin and hair from the dozen women living in the room. The air quality would be atrocious. You are breathing in a soup of particulate matter. Your throat is likely dry and scratchy. Your eyes sting from the smoke and the tapestries themselves. What is on them? You don't get to choose the decor to be soothing. The tapestries are often heirlooms depicting biblical scenes or mythological battles. Imagine staring for 4 weeks at a woven image of the judgment of Solomon or the martyrdom of St. Catherine, figures frozen in thread, staring back at you in the flickering candlelight, shadows dancing across their faces, making them seem to move. In your sleep-deprived, anxious state, the room itself begins to feel alive. The silence or lack thereof is also a torture. The whispering, the rustling, but also the bells. You can hear the church bells of the city ringing the hours. Dong, dong, dong. They mark the passing of time that feels frozen inside the room. They remind you that the world is going on without you. The market is opening. The ships are sailing. The king is hunting, but you are here, waiting. As the due date gets closer, the tension in the room ratchets up. The ladies in waiting stop gossiping about fashion and start watching you more closely. Did you see her grimace? Is she clutching her back? Every gas pain is analyzed. Every shift in position is a potential signal. The midwives begin to prepare their equipment. They lay out the linen sheets. They prepare the basins of water. They mix the oils. You feel the weight of the kingdom on your shoulders. If the baby is a girl, you have failed. The king will be disappointed. The alliance might crumble. You might be set aside. Ask Catherine of Aragon about the consequences of producing a girl. If the baby is stillborn, it is a tragedy, but also a political disaster. If the baby is deformed, it is seen as a judgment from God, a reflection of your own inner sin. The pressure is crushing. It is not just the fear of pain, it is the fear of failure on a global stage. You are an athlete walking out to the Olympic final, but if you lose, you don't just get a silver medal. You might get beheaded, divorced, or erased from history. And then, one night, or one slow, dusty afternoon, it happens. A cramp. Not the dull ache of the heavy uterus, but a sharp, tightening band of pressure that wraps around your lower back and squeezes. You pause, you hold your breath. The ladies in waiting freeze. The cards are lowered. The lute player stops mid-strum. "Majesty?" one of them asks. "You wait." It passes. But then, 10 minutes later, it returns. Sharp. Undeniable. The waiting is over. The boredom of the confinement is shattered. The doors of the chamber, which have been sealed to keep the world out, are about to be unbarred. But they are not opening to let you out. They are opening to let the witnesses in. The private prison is about to become a public stage. The audience is gathering in the hallways. The bishops are putting on their vestments. The king is being summoned from the hunt. You are about to perform the most intimate act of human life in front of a crowd. Take a deep breath. Drink the last dregs of your spiced caudle. Grip the arms of your velvet chair. The confinement is done. The torture of the birth is about to begin. The silence of the confinement is broken. For weeks you have lived in a hushed, twilight world, listening only to the crackle of the fire and the low murmurs of your ladies in waiting. You have been a hermit in a velvet cave. But with that first, undeniable contraction, the tightening band of iron around your lower back, the illusion of privacy shatters. You give the signal. Perhaps you nod to your chief midwife. Perhaps you simply grip the arm of your chair until your knuckles turn white. The reaction is immediate, but it is not the frantic rush of a modern emergency room. It is the choreographed opening of a theater. The ladies in waiting rise. One goes to the door. The heavy iron bolt is drawn back. The seal is broken, and the world comes rushing in. You are about to experience one of the most jarring transitions in human experience. You are moving from the deep, meditative quiet of the womb room into the chaotic, noisy, and suffocating atmosphere of a state event. Because a royal birth is not a medical procedure, it is a legal ceremony. The doors to the antechamber are thrown open. The news travels like a shockwave through the palace corridors. The queen is in labor. Within minutes, the room begins to fill. And it is here that the true horror of the elite experience reveals itself. If you were a peasant woman in a cottage, your husband would likely leave the room. He would boil water or wait outside with the neighbors. You would be left with the women. Your mother, a local midwife, perhaps a sister. It would be a female space, intimate and focused. But you are the queen, and the legitimacy of the child inside you is the single most important political fact in the kingdom. There must be no doubt. There must be no rumors of a changeling, a common baby swapped for a stillborn royal infant in a warming pan. To ensure this, the birth must be witnessed. Imagine the scene as the witnesses arrive. These are not people you would choose to be with you in your most vulnerable moment. These are officials. First, the religious authorities. The bishop, perhaps even the archbishop, sweeps in, his heavy robes rustling, carrying the scent of incense and old parchment. He takes his place in the corner, clutching his prayer book. He is not there to help you breathe. He is there to ensure that if the baby dies, it is baptized instantly. He is a reminder of the mortality that hangs over the room. Then the political heavyweights, the Lord Chancellor, the Privy Councillors, the ambassadors from Spain, from France, from the Holy Roman Empire. They press into the room, their eyes scanning everything. They are there to verify that the child actually comes from your body. They are there to report back to their own kings whether the new heir is strong or weak, male or female. The room, which felt claustrophobic with just 12 ladies, now becomes a crush. In the case of Marie Antoinette, the most famous and extreme example of this public torture, the crowd was so dense that courtiers climbed onto the furniture to get a better view. They stood on chairs. They sat on the marble mantelpiece of the fireplace. The room was packed shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of people, all staring at the woman groaning on the bed. For you, perhaps it is not hundreds, but it is dozens. The air in the room, already hot from the roaring fire and the sealed windows, begins to degrade rapidly. The oxygen level drops. The temperature rises. The smell becomes overpowering. It is a mixture of the wood smoke that has nowhere to escape the melting beeswax of 100 candles, lit now to give the witnesses a clear view, and the body heat of 50 people dressed in heavy wool, fur, and velvet. You begin to sweat, not just from the labor, but from the environment. The air feels thick, almost liquid, in your lungs. It is hard to breathe. You feel dizzy, a swimming sensation in your head that has nothing to do with the contractions. You are moved from your chair, but you do not lie down on a bed. The lying in happens after the birth. For the act itself, you are guided to the center of the room, to the stage prop of this drama. The birthing stool. This is a piece of furniture designed for function, not comfort. It is a low wooden chair, often with a horseshoe-shaped seat, a U-shape with the front cut away. It forces you into a squatting position, allowing gravity to assist the descent of the child. It is padded with velvet or leather, but the wood beneath is hard. You sit on it, your knees spread, your heavy robes pulled up. Behind you sits one of the midwives, or perhaps a strong lady in waiting. She is your back prop. She wraps her arms around your chest, supporting your weight, allowing you to lean back against her during the waves of pain. In front of you kneels the chief midwife. She is the director of this play. She is usually a woman of immense experience, her hands rough but skilled. She occupies the space between your knees, the landing zone, and around you, forming a tight inner circle, are your ladies. They hold the basins of warm water. They hold the towels. They hold the candles close to your body so the midwife can see. But beyond this inner circle of women is the outer circle of men, the bishops, the dukes, the ambassadors. They stand back, perhaps 10 feet away, but they are there. You can see them in the shadows. You can hear their low conversations. How long has it been? She looks weak. The king will be anxious. You are an animal in a zoo, performing a biological trick for the entertainment and reassurance of the state. The hours begin to drag. Labor is rarely quick. It is a grinding, slow erosion of your strength. The pain comes in waves. It starts as a low rumble in your back, builds to a crescendo that steals your breath, and then slowly recedes, leaving you panting and trembling. In a modern hospital, you might have music. You might have ice chips. You might have an epidural to numb the sensation. Here you have caudal and superstition. The midwife urges you to drink. For your strength, majesty. She lifts the two-handled cup to your lips. You sip the thick, warm, spiced wine. It is cloying. It coats your tongue with sugar and grit. It makes you feel sluggish, slightly drunk, but it does not touch the sharpness of the pain. When the pain becomes unbearable, when you want to scream, you remember who you are. You are the queen. You cannot scream like a peasant. You cannot curse. You cannot lose control. You must suffer with dignity. You bite your lip until it bleeds. You groan low in your throat. The ladies in waiting offer you the medical technology of the day. They bring out the relics. Perhaps it is a piece of the true cross, encased in gold. They invite you to kiss it. Perhaps it is a girdle of the Virgin, an ancient, crumbling strip of parchment or fabric that is said to have belonged to the Virgin Mary. They wrap it around your swollen belly. It is believed to speed the labor, to untie the knots of the womb. They bring you gemstones, eagle stones, etites, hollow stones with a loose pebble inside that rattles, the pregnant stone. They tie it to your left thigh to draw the baby down. You cling to these objects. In the haze of pain and heat, the rational mind dissolves. You are willing to believe in anything. You clutch the cold gold of the cross, praying that it will act as a key to unlock your body. But sometimes the baby does not come. The hours turn into a day. The candles burn down and are replaced. The witnesses shift on their feet, bored and tired, but unwilling to leave. They order food brought to them in the antechamber. You can smell the roast meat, which makes your stomach turn. The atmosphere in the room changes from anticipation to anxiety. The midwife's face grows serious. She whispers to her assistants. They bring more hot water. They mix more herbs, mugwort and pennyroyal, to burn in the fire, filling the room with a pungent medicinal smoke that makes your eyes water. You are exhausted. You have been awake for 24 hours. Your legs are trembling uncontrollably from the strain of squatting on the stool. You beg to lie down, but they urge you to stay upright. Gravity is your friend, Majesty. Let the earth pull him out. The heat is unbearable. You are drenched in sweat. Your heavy velvet gown is heavy and sodden. You feel trapped in your own body, trapped in this room, trapped in the expectations of the men watching from the shadows. This is the moment of terror. You know what happens if the baby gets stuck. You know the stories. In the village, if a birth goes wrong, it is a tragedy. In the palace, it is a crisis of succession. And if it goes truly wrong, the hierarchy of care shifts. If the midwife fails, the surgeon is called. The very mention of the surgeon sends a chill through the room that is colder than any draft. In this era, male surgeons do not attend normal births. Birth is women's work. The surgeon is a man of tools. He is a man of iron and steel. He is called only for the dead or the dying. If the midwife signals that she can do no more, the king, who is waiting outside, gives the order. The door opens and the surgeon enters. He is different from the courtiers. He does not wear silk. He wears a leather apron. He carries a bag that clanks with a terrifying metallic sound. He does not know you. He has never spoken to you. To him you are a puzzle of flesh and bone to be solved. He approaches the birthing stool. The ladies in waiting shrink back. The modesty of the queen is paramount. Even in death, so a sheet is draped over you. He must work by touch alone. He cannot see what he is doing. He reaches under the sheet. His hands are rougher than the midwife's. He has hooks. He has knives. His priority is stark, the soul of the child. If the baby is alive but stuck, and he cannot extract it, and he believes you are dying, the theology of the time dictates a brutal calculus. The child must be baptized. An unbaptized child cannot enter heaven. It is condemned to limbo. Your life, the life of the mother, is secondary to the eternal salvation of the heir. He prepares for the cesarean. In this period, it is almost exclusively a post-mortem procedure, or a last-ditch effort when the mother is deemed lost. It is not a surgery for survival. It is a surgery for the soul. You see the glint of the instrument in the candlelight. You feel the cold focus of his intent. You look at the bishop, who is stepping forward now, opening his book, ready to perform the rite. The terror is absolute. You are surrounded by people, dozens of them, yet you are utterly abandoned to the mechanics of biology and theology. The gold on the walls, the velvet on the chairs, the power of your title, none of it matters. You are just a body on a wooden stool, waiting for the metal. But let us pull back from the brink. Let us imagine that the surgeon is not needed. Let us imagine that the eagle stone works, or that gravity finally prevails. A shift occurs. The midwife feels the head. "Push, Majesty," she hisses. "Push now." The room goes silent. The gossiping stops. The ambassadors lean forward. The bishop stops praying. The only sound is the roar of the fire and your own ragged breathing. You summon the last reserves of your strength. You grip the hands of the ladies beside you, crushing their fingers. You push against the pain, against the fear, against the exhaustion. It feels like you are being torn apart. The ring of fire, the sensation of splitting, and then a sudden, slippery release. The silence holds for a heartbeat. A terrifying suspended second where the fate of the nation hangs in the balance. Is it alive? Is it dead? And then a cry, thin, reedy, angry. the sound of life. The midwife catches the child. She does not hand it to you. Not yet. She checks the anatomy. This is the moment the ambassadors are waiting for. This is the moment the king is waiting for. It is a prince, she cries out. Or perhaps with a lower voice, a princess. The room erupts. The tension breaks like a dam. The witnesses cheer. The doors are thrown open. A prince! A prince! The cry goes down the hallway out into the courtyard, and soon bells will ring across the city. But you sink back into the arms of your back prop. You are trembling violently now. The postpartum shakes. You are covered in sweat, blood, and fluids. You feel hollowed out. They cut the cord. They take the baby away to be washed and swaddled in gold cloth. The bishop blesses it. The ambassadors crowd around to look at its face to verify its health. You are almost forgotten in the chaos of the triumph. The vessel has served its purpose. The treasure has been extracted. The midwife tends to you. She presses on your stomach to expel the afterbirth. One last indignity of pain. She cleans you with warm water and vinegar. She helps you off the stool. You cannot walk. Your legs are like jelly. You're half carried to the bed. The bed is warmed with a warming pan. The sheets are fresh. You collapse into the feathers. The physical ordeal of the birth is over, but the ordeal of the lying in is just beginning. You are not free to leave this room. You are not free to walk in the garden. You must remain here in the dark for another 30 days. You close your eyes. The sound of the celebration outside, the cannons firing, the people shouting, sounds like it is coming from another world, a world you used to belong to. You are alive. You have survived the public torture. You have done your duty. But as you drift into sleep, listening to the crackle of the fire that is still burning, you realize that the silence you craved is finally here. The witnesses are leaving. The show is over, and you are alone in the dark once more. The adrenaline of the birth has evaporated. The chaos of the event has receded like a tide, leaving behind the wreckage of the shore. The king has gone to celebrate. The ambassadors have rushed off to write their dispatches, their quills scratching frantically against parchment to inform their masters that the succession is secure, or to whisper concerns if the infant looks weak. The bishop has packed away his holy water and his books. The surgeon, thank God, was not needed, and his terrifying bag of iron instruments has left the room with him. The heavy oak doors of the chamber are closed once more. The bolt slides home with a sound of finality. You are back in the seal, but the room feels different now. Before it was a waiting room, charged with anxiety and the anticipation of pain. Now it is a recovery ward, but it is also a prison. You are lying in the great bed. The velvet curtains are drawn around you, creating a cocoon of shadow. The fire is still roaring in the hearth, kept high to sweat out the humors of the birth. The air is still thick, hot, and perfumed with the scent of musk and ambergris, now mixed with the metallic, earthy smell of the aftermath. You are exhausted, a bone-deep weariness that feels like it has seeped into the marrow of your skeleton. But you are not allowed to simply sleep. You are now the subject of the lying in. For the next 30 to 40 days, you will not leave this room. You will barely leave this bed. The first order of business in this new phase is the reconstruction of the queen's body. In the modern world, a mother might be encouraged to walk, to shower, to move. In the Tudor or Valois court, movement is the enemy. The physicians believe that your internal organs are loose, floating dangerously in the void left by the child. They believe your bones have been softened and separated by the heat of labor, so you must be bound. The midwives return. They are gentle but firm. They lift you, helpless as a doll, and they begin to wrap you. They use long strips of linen, yards and yards of it. They wind it tightly around your abdomen, pulling it taut until it compresses your stomach. This is belly binding. They believe it pushes the uterus back into place, closes the hips, and prevents the wandering womb from traveling up into your chest and suffocating you, a genuine medical fear of the time. You are swaddled, just like the infant. You are mummified in white cloth, restricted, held together by fabric. It is tight. It makes it shallow to breathe. but it feels oddly securing, a physical embrace that holds your trembling muscles still. And where is the child? Where is the prince you just suffered to produce? He is not in the bed with you. He is not at your breast. In the courts of Europe, a queen almost never breastfeeds. It is considered improper. It is believed that the act of nursing prevents conception, and your duty is not just to produce one heir, but a spare, and then another. You need to be fertile again as soon as possible. Furthermore, it is believed that breastfeeding ruins the figure, consumes the mother's strength, and exposes the royal infant to the passions of the mother's milk. So the child is taken away. He is handed to the wet nurse. This is a woman who has been chosen with the same scrutiny as a prime minister. For months, the physicians have been interviewing candidates. They have examined their teeth. They have examined their milk, tasting it, looking at the color and consistency on a fingernail. They have investigated their morals, their diet, and their family history. They believe that the character of the nurse is transmitted through the milk. A fearful nurse will make a fearful prince. A stupid nurse will make a stupid king. So now, you watch from your pillow. Through the gap in the bed curtains, you see another woman holding your son. You see her unlace her bodice. You see the child latch onto her. It is a strange, hollow grief. You are the vessel, the factory that produced the product. But now the product has been handed to a specialist for maintenance. You are separated by protocol. You might hold him for a few minutes a day, presented to you like a precious object. But the intimate, messy, bonding reality of motherhood is denied to you. You lie back in the dark. You listen to the wet nurse cooing to the baby in the corner. You hear the soft suckling sounds, and you feel the ache in your own chest, the biological urge that is being suppressed with binding and medicines. Days pass, then weeks. The lying in is a test of psychological endurance. The sensory deprivation continues. The windows remain blocked. The fire remains hot. The room remains a twilight zone, disconnected from the rhythm of the sun and the moon. You lose track of time. Is it morning? Is it evening? You only know by the meals brought to you. The diet continues to be heavy and rich. More caudal, more roasted meats, jellies made from calves' feet, believed to strengthen the joints. You are being force-fed calories to rebuild your strength, but without exercise your body becomes heavy and sluggish. You feel a lethargy settling over you, a melancholy that sits on your chest like a stone. We would call it postpartum depression. They called it the vapors, or an imbalance of the black bile, to keep you entertained. The gossips are there. This is the term for the ladies who sit with you. It comes from god-sibs, god-siblings, the women who attended the birth. They try to cheer you up. They play cards endlessly. The snap of the pasteboard cards on the velvet table becomes the soundtrack of your confinement. They read to you long, droning romances about knights and dragons that seem utterly disconnected from your reality of soreness and milk fever. They bring you news of the court, but it feels like news from a foreign country. The king went hunting today. The French ambassador wore a ridiculous hat. The kitchen caught fire, but it was put out. You nod. You smile. But you feel like a ghost haunting your own palace. You are alive, but you are not of the world. You are in the liminal space, the unclean time. This is the hardest part to understand for the modern mind. Why the seclusion? Why the 40 days? It is rooted in Leviticus in the Bible. A woman who gives birth is considered ceremonially unclean. The act of birth with its blood and fluids is seen as a pollution. You are not sinful in a moral sense, but you are ritually taboo. You cannot enter a church, you cannot take communion, you cannot touch holy objects. You are in a spiritual quarantine. This adds a layer of shame to the boredom. You have done the most noble thing a queen can do, produced an heir. Yet you are treated as a source of contamination. You must wait for your body to stop bleeding, for the lochial phase to pass, before you are fit to be seen by God or men. So you wait. You count the patterns in the damask canopy of your bed. You count the cracks in the ceiling plaster. You watch the dust motes dancing in the shaft of light that sneaks through a gap in the tapestry. Finally, the count is up. 30 days, 40 days. It depends on the custom and your recovery. The physicians examine you. They nod. The discharge has stopped. You are pale, weak from lack of sunlight and movement, but you are clean. The day of the churching arrives. This is your re-entry permit to humanity. The ritual begins in the morning. For the first time in a month, the tapestries are pulled down from the windows. The light, it is blinding. It hurts your eyes. The gray, unfiltered daylight of the real world floods the room, revealing the dust, the stale crumbs on the floor, the clutter of a month's confinement. It is shocking. You squint, tears streaming down your face, overwhelmed by the sudden expansion of your visual world. The servants strip the bed. They take away the soiled linens, the heavy blankets. The fire is allowed to die down. The windows are opened, letting in a blast of fresh air that smells of the gardens, the stables, the river. A smell so sharp and complex it makes you dizzy. You are dressed, not in your nightgown, but in robes of state. But there is a specific uniform for this day. You are dressed in white. You wear a white veil that covers your head and face. You look like a bride, but also like a ghost. You leave the room. Walking down the corridor feels strange. Your legs are weak. Your balance is off. The floor feels hard beneath your velvet slippers. You feel exposed without the walls of the chamber around you. A procession forms. Your ladies, also in their finery, fall in behind you. The chamberlain, the ushers, the guards, they all take their places. You walk to the chapel royal. The king does not usually attend this. This is a female mystery, a reintegration of the woman into the spiritual community. You wait at the door of the church. You are not allowed in yet. You are still technically unclean. The priest meets you at the threshold. He is wearing a white stole. He sprinkles you with holy water, cold, shocking drops on your face. He hands you a lit candle. He recites the psalm, "I have lifted up mine eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help." He offers you the end of his stole. You take hold of the fabric. Led by the priest, holding onto his vestment like a lifeline, you are led into the church. This is the moment of transition. You are crossing the boundary. You are stepping out of the shadow of death and back into the light of the living. You kneel at the altar. The candle flickers in your hand. You offer the candle to the priest. You might also offer a chrism cloth, the cloth that was used to cover the baby's head at baptism. The priest says the prayers of purification. He gives thanks for your deliverance from the great danger of childbirth. And then it is done. You stand up, the veil is lifted. You can take communion. You are clean. You are a queen again. The solemnity evaporates instantly. The doors of the chapel open and you step out into the court. Now the king is there to greet you. The music starts. Loud, brassy trumpets that make you jump after weeks of whispers. There is a feast. There is dancing. You sit at the high table eating rich food, drinking wine, watching the courtiers bow and scrape. You are back. You have survived. But as you look around the room, at the bright colors, the laughter, the political maneuvering, you feel a distance. You have been to the underworld. You have been in the dark box. You have felt the knife edge of mortality. You look at the king. He is smiling, boasting about his son. He has no idea what the room was like. He has no idea of the smell, the heat, the terror of the stool. And then, a cold thought settles in your stomach. You will have to do it again. Ideally, next year. The cycle of the royal womb does not stop. The factory must keep producing. You are churched and clean now, which means you are ready to be used again. The boring history of a queen is not a fairy tale. It is a loop of pregnancy, confinement, terror, and recovery. It is a life lived in service to a biology that is not your own. And so we come to the end of our journey. We have traveled through the landscape of the past, not looking at the battles or the treaties, but at the bodies. We started in the barber-surgeon's shop, smelling the vinegar and the blood, feeling the crunch of the pliers as a common tooth was pulled from a common jaw. We learned that for the average person, pain was a daily companion, and the cure was often indistinguishable from torture. We moved to the palace of Versailles, where we saw that even the Sun King, the most powerful man on earth, could not escape the humiliation of the flesh. We watched the royal fistula be cut with a silver knife. proving that beneath the gold and the wigs, we are all just soft, vulnerable tissue. We walked the dusty roads to Strasbourg, witnessing the dancing plague. We saw how hunger and fear could break the human mind, creating a nightmare where the body moved without permission, a collective madness born of despair. And finally, we sat in the dark of the Queen's chamber. We saw that privilege is no shield against biology. We saw the suffocation of the elite, the surveillance of the womb, and the lonely, terrifying duty of the royal mother. This is the boring history of the world. It isn't about the dates on a monument. It isn't about the lines on a map. It is about the sensation of a rough wool blanket against feverish skin. It is about the taste of spiced wine masking the taste of blood. It is about the sound of a drumbeat that won't stop, and the silence of a room where the sun never shines. It is about the universal, human experience of living in a body that is fragile, in a world that is hard. But now, the journey is over. The barber has wiped his blade. The king is sleeping soundly on his stomach. The dancers have collapsed in the cool moss of the mountain cave. The queen has blown out her candle. And you are safe. You are not in a dark, sealed room. You are not on a wooden stage. You are in your own bed. The air around you is cool and fresh. The blanket over you is light. The pain of the past is a story. It is a shadow that cannot touch you here. Take a deep breath. Feel the air fill your lungs. Easy, painless, free. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the tension drain out of your hands, out of your feet, flowing away into the mattress. The history is done. The book is closed. The candle is snuffed out. Good night.